Good evening. This is Steve Maher. I call this meeting of October 16th.
There he is.
I'm okay. I haven't frozen. Yeah. Okay. I call this meeting of October 16th, 2020 to order at 5:01. This special board meeting for Friday, October 16th, 2020 will be conducted completely online. The governor's executive order N-25-20 relaxes the Brown Act requirements for holding public meetings via teleconference. Per normal practice, this meeting will be recorded, live streamed, and televised. Members of the public may attend via the public viewing link located on PUSD's website. Public viewing link will be provided via TV 28 on cable TV or by streaming from TV 28 at www.tv30.org. Per normal practice, the meeting will be live streamed and available at www.tv30.org for viewing and also broadcast live on Comcast TV channel 28 beginning at 5. The online speaker slip link is available on the agenda. The public will be able to call in using a computer or smartphone via a link which will be provided following submission of a speaker slip. A telephonic option will also be available. Once connected, the public speaker will be placed in an online waiting room. While in the waiting room, the public speaker should watch or listen to the meeting via the outlets above, as they will not see or hear the meeting while they are connected and waiting to speak. Tonight, public comments will only be accepted for items on the agenda. That's a change, for only the item on the agenda. When the board is ready for public comment, the speaker will be announced in the public meeting as to when it is his or her time to speak to the school board of trustees. The speaker will then be moved to the meeting for comment. TV 30 is allowing only audio at this time, adding a full screen public comment when the speaker is talking. Yellow comment forms are for items only on the agenda. Individual speakers shall be allowed no more than 2 minutes to address the board for the sake of time. At this time, I'd like to stand so we can say the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, I see everybody up. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody tonight. First, we have Trustee Mark Miller, Trustee Joan Larson, Trustee Valerie Arkin, Board Vice President Jamie Yee, on Board President Steve Maher, Julio Hernandez, Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, Ahmad Shiko Leslami, Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, Ed Dialazzo, Assistant Superintendent of Student Support Services, Dr. Janelle Woodward, Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning, Superintendent Dr. David Haglin, Patrick Gannon, Coordinator of Communications and Community Engagement, Lanita Villasenor, Administrative Assistant to the Business Services Division, who is helping us out and doing actually 2 jobs. Thank you, Lanita. At this time, I'd like to have an approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion?
I'll move approval of the agenda.
I'll second.
Okay. Trustee Arkin,
Aye.
Trustee Miller,
Aye.
Trustee Larson,
Aye.
Trustee Yee,
Aye.
and Trustee Maher, aye. Next is number 3, report discussion and possible action. 3.1, report discussion and possible action to approve school opening plan. And Dr. Haglin, it's all yours.
Thank you, President Maher. I'm going to ask that Patrick open up the presentation for us tonight and drive through the presentation. All right, so we're here tonight to talk about our school reopening plan. And as we step into that work, we're going to be looking at much of the information that we shared with the community and with our employees over the past couple of days. So we'll do it briefly as we walk through several different slides. And we'll try to do it rapidly because a lot of this is information that you've already had. So the focus of the town halls were to provide updates on the county guidance, to review our preparations and protocols, to overview model options, and to collect feedback and address questions. Next slide. There were approximately a little over 600 participants in our employee town hall on Wednesday, and we had over 1,300 participants in the community town hall last night. Each presentation was about 45 minutes of staff updates, and then 45 minutes approximately for answers or questions and answers that were raised in the town hall. We had three what I call dipstick poll questions, and we'll look at those tonight. And each of the town halls were recorded and will be shared with the different groups. Next slide. Just an update on the current status. This is a fluid situation, as you're all well aware. The guidance was updated on October 1st when we shifted to the red tier. Alameda County issued new guidance, which included the ability for schools to reopen after October 12th. The county asked for a reopening plan to be drafted by each district or school in the cases of private schools and charters. That would address items on a checklist. The checklist is there. If you could click on the checklist, Patrick, just so that employees know that if you download this presentation, you can click on the links. They're all live, and you can get to a lot of these resource documents that we will not be clicking on all the links tonight. But you can see all of the different areas that we were required to address in the reopening plan. It's just a checklist. But there's a document that's created that's narrative that addresses each one of these areas. And then we also have to identify which schools, which grade levels, and then I have to sign indicating that we're prepared to implement all of those items. So let's click out. Alameda County, as you probably know, shifted to the orange tier on October 13th. Both ACOE and ACPHD have issued press releases with additional information, but we do not anticipate large-scale changes to the guidance until we have been in the orange tier for 2 weeks. That's the protocol that the Alameda County Public Health Department has been following. So we're kind of looking at that October 26th date as the next release. Next slide. So one of the polls, the first thing that we did in the poll is we asked people just to give us a sense of how they were feeling about returning to school. And so how would you rate your current thinking about returning to in-person on-campus instruction? And you can see there that this is the staff input. If you think about it this way, the two answers were kind of on the positive side and two answers were on the not so positive side. And so the blue and the green are those people who are ready to return or cautiously willing to return, and this is staff again. And then the red and the yellow are those people who still feel it's too soon or they're not ready to return at this time. We asked the same question of the parents in their town hall. So you can see also that the green and the blue is slightly smaller than the red and the yellow. Next slide. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Dialazzo at this point.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Haglund. Good afternoon, President Maher, Board of Trustees, members of the Cabinet and Pleasanton community. As Dr. Haglund mentioned, we went over the next few slides that I'll be reviewing during the town hall, so I'll go through them very quickly. I did want to orient you to the document there at the top of this page, and Patrick, if you just click on that, please, Mr. Gannon. So this document is a guidance from Alameda County Public Health and Alameda County Office of Education. And this is the document that many of you hopefully have seen by now. If you haven't, this is a document that guides school districts in the county, Alameda County, as we put together our plans, our protocol, and we review this weekly. I mean, I believe this gets reviewed and updated just about every week. So get familiar with it. It is a document, like I said, that is used throughout the county. So this week, we are in version 14 of this document. If you can go back, Mr. Gannon. Thank you. And I wanted to review some of the updates in version 14, which was updated October 15th, which was yesterday. So it's brand new. Some important highlights that I want to review for the board and community. Alameda County Office of Education has reached an agreement with a company is called Curative Incorporated, and this will allow districts in the county to screen school district staff. And so in the press release, it mentioned that if we want to, as a school district, participate in that contract with Alameda County and this vendor. And essentially it is low cost to free screening opportunities for us. And so that screening consists of a self-administered oral fluid swab, and the results of that screening can come back to us within 48 hours. So that's a pretty significant support that the County Office of Education has provided to the districts. Secondly, another important update is that students are now allowed to participate in 2 stable cohorts. So prior to this update, it was 1 cohort stable, students can participate in that and no other, but this guidance now allows students to participate in 2. The California Public Health Department also now allows for outdoor singing or choir and band practice. I know the community has been waiting for that opportunity, so that is now allowed for districts in the state. And then the last one is playground usage. So beginning today, actually, Alameda County Public Health now permits the use of the outdoor playgrounds in the community. So one thing I want to say is that we as Pleasanton have not yet planned for this, talked about this. We will be developing plans, reviewing the information, and we will see for our playgrounds on campuses as to what we do with that. So we're still planning that as we speak. And that is true for all of these updates today. Next page, Mr. Gannon.
Ed, could I ask a question?
Yes, sir.
When it says, for our people viewing, when you say 2 cohorts, what will that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question, President Maher. So, for example, some of our students right now are in the small cohort supervision program. So that would be considered 1 stable cohort. If the students were to participate in another program on the same campus, let's say the Kids Club program, so they're in the cohort during the day, they go to the Kids Club program in the afternoon, that is now allowable. They are now able to participate in those 2 cohorts.
So they're not talking about 2 classes getting together necessarily?
No, not really. It's a student can participate in those 2 cohorts. I mean, now that you asked that question, I think technically that may be doable, but let's stick with the individual student, 2 stable cohorts. Student can attend cohort A and cohort B. So there is a possibility of mixing. Now that you say that, let me think about that.
A student can participate in 2 cohorts. That's the guidance right now. So if we called people back to school and 3rd graders were in their class, but they were also in Kids Club, that would be an example of 2 separate cohorts that they could participate in. But if they were in soccer, that's also a cohort. And so they wouldn't be able to do all 3. And so there's going to be decisions that folks have to make as long as that guidance is maintained by the county.
Yeah. I was thinking about your question, Steve, and I'm thinking about whole classes. So if we had 2 cohorts of 14 students each, I don't think the guidance is saying, oh, then those 2 14 group cohorts can now mix. I don't think that's what the intention is. It's really about particular students who are in activities like, let's say, after school sports, Kids Club, or a classroom. So that's the way we're thinking about it.
Overall county guideline then.
That is the county guideline. That's correct. Okay, next, Patrick. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. The town halls, if you participated in that, you would have seen this, and I've also reviewed this in the board meetings. Essentially, as Dr. Haglund mentioned, there is a school reopening plan that we will be reviewing and hopefully submitting to the county. There are requirements on that plan, and Dr. Haglund mentioned that checklist. The one thing I want to add to this particular slide is the requirement of the district having the COVID liaisons. So school districts are required to identify staff who would serve as the COVID liaison to the county. And I want to add that each school site is also required to have a school site county liaison. So in terms of the flow of communication, let's say there's a COVID case at a school site, that would be communicated to the school site COVID liaison, which would be then communicated to the district COVID liaison, and that district liaison would communicate to Alameda County Public Health. And as I've said before, I'm the designee for the district to serve as that COVID liaison along with two of my colleagues, Kathleen Reif and Leslie Heller. Next page, Mr. Gannon. Okay, I've talked about this slide as well. The recommendation from the county and the state is that school districts may provide testing for staff. And so we are, if we are going to do the testing, the recommendations are essentially any staff member that works with our students, has contact with other people, those are the staff members that would be recommended to be tested. The current recommendation is for COVID testing to occur in intervals, and that interval right now is once a month. So if we were to do the testing for the district, all staff would be tested at least once a month. The two things I want to highlight here are bold in at the bottom of the page, and the second one is that the Alameda County Office of Education, as I said earlier, is now contracted with this company. Districts can do more testing if needed, and that's that topic up there that says surveillance testing. And essentially, we would need to monitor what the trends are in the county and the city with COVID cases. And so if we feel as a district that we would test more, then we would go ahead and do that, or test less, frankly. It's really up to the discretion of each school district in the county to do so. Next page, Mr. Gannon. Okay, and I've also reviewed this slide with all of you, and this slide essentially tells school districts in the plan, tells the county in the plan, what are those requirements if we were to open, what are the triggers that would put us back into distance learning? And so if you look at the three sub-bullets there, we describe a 5% infection rate or COVID positive in a classroom would require us to close that classroom and then follow up with a 14-day quarantine of every student and staff member in that class. As a school, if there's a 5% positive testing rate in the school, we would close the school, and then everyone would be subject to that 14-day quarantine. And then if 1 in 4 schools in the district had a 5% positivity rate, then the school district, again, would close for in-person instruction. The one thing I wanted to add is that the Alameda County Health Director may also close the school for any reason that they determine. And so what we think about there is if there's a surge in the hospitals, or if there's a higher positivity or case rate in the county public health director could close schools once again. So that is a requirement that we need to put into the plan, and I know we're going to review that plan here in a little bit. Okay, I'll stop there for now and turn it over to our Assistant Superintendent of Business, Ahmed Sheikh-Holaslami.
Thank you, Ed. Good evening, board members, superintendent, and community. We reviewed this several times, but just the key highlights is the district does have the appropriate supplies for our personal protective equipment. We've been sending those to the school sites and making sure our staff have those available to them. Additionally, we have put soap dispensers and hand sanitizers throughout our schools, and those are currently being utilized by both students and staff who are at our school sites. We've developed cleaning procedures and processes. We have checklists that our custodians perform on a daily basis, and we've been performing that cleaning services since the beginning of the pandemic. And as our schools are currently have teachers and office staff, kids club, and with the start of the small cohort supervision as well. So we are ready to move into expanding those services as our schools are reopening. Additionally, next slide, please. Again, we have been working on our ventilation systems, and we moved early on to increase the airflow into our classrooms and spaces. And so our elementary schools, middle schools are all complete in terms of maximizing our fresh air intake. We are working through our high schools. We made sure that our SDC classes had been adjusted prior to our small cohort program. We requested our staff to open doors and windows when possible. And we have also ordered the MERV 13 filters for our elementary schools. And they should be arriving in the next few weeks. And we believe within the next 3 to 4 weeks, we will have them ready and installed. The other news I like to share is that the air purifiers have been installed in all of the special day classes. They were arrived the last few days, and we got them out to those classes. And we plan to expand those to our TK, K, and small cohort classes as well. Additionally, we've been doing the meal services. This week, we expanded that to our small cohort program and are ready to move into the hybrid mode and have protocols in place for the appropriate social distancing, hand sanitizers, and protection of our staff as well. The free SSO program has been expanded to the end of the school year. So before it was going to the end of December, but that program has now been expanded through the end of the school year. So that's good news for our community as well. Our technology, we continue to support our community, and we have been actually doing quite a bit of work with teaching and learning and looking at other needs that there might be out there. Our transportation team, we're going through our safety checks and preparing our routes to be able to support our special ed students for both the small cohort program as we move into reopening the schools as well. And they too will have the safety protocols in place with screening of students, social distancing, and making sure the buses are regularly cleaned. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Woodward.
Thank you so much. Good evening, President Maher, trustees, Dr. Haglund, Cabinet, and the Pleasanton community. As we consider our next steps, let's take a moment and review the reopening plan that the Pleasanton Board of Trustees approved on July 14th. At that time, the decision was made to begin entirely in remote instruction because of the current health guidance and the governor's subsequent order. Tonight, I will share some potential modifications for the consideration of the trustees, including shifts with preschool and all elementary SDC classes. An additional note is that when the board approved SDC students TK-12 to return, along with Village in the model noted on this slide, current health department guidance does not allow for middle through high school students to be on our campuses right now outside of the small cohort supervision model. We also discussed at that time the at-home learners in Flex Academy at the July 14th board meeting. Due to the significant number of requests for at-home and Flex Academy, 1,700, we made every effort to accommodate these requests, and in doing so, found that we would have needed to create 33 to 38 combination classes just at the elementary level, and would also have resulted in the elimination of singleton courses, other high school and middle school courses, including AP courses. Next slide, please. So while we are thinking long-term about our shifts to partial or full return to school, Our plan for TK2 and elementary SDC is to open in stages and smaller cohorts. Thereby, the AM/PM model that was adopted at the July 14th Board of Trustees meeting does support this. The reality is that at any time, regardless of the options for in-person or at-home learning that was initially submitted by parents in the summer, these scenarios can become an uneven split due to child or family exposure to COVID-19, child illness requiring a 10-day quarantine, or a parent decision to keep a student home for health and safety reasons. Next slide, please. So this brings us to the potential need to implement a concurrent instructional model. So what is concurrent instruction? Concurrent instruction occurs when some students attend class in person while other students attend class at the same time from a remote location. Students are able to log in through Zoom or Google Meet. Next slide, please. So option one that we bring to the trustees this evening is the concurrent instruction model for TK2 and all elementary SDC, including mild, moderate, and moderate severe. This is a sample schedule, and I want to make sure that I note that principals set the schedule with input from their staffs. So these times are simply approximations. This model aligns with the June 14th adopted plan in that students are either in the AM or PM group. It will be necessary for the sites to determine which students are placed in the AM or the PM, as well as to how they would group in-person and at-home students. Principals would work with teachers to identify the student cohorts to best support social, emotional, and academic learning. We know that from the data collected at our employee town hall and our community town hall, that remote instruction is generally working well for most of our students. We see from our visits and from community feedback that our teachers are designing and implementing a rigorous instructional program that is requiring extensive time for planning and a well-executed instructional delivery model, which is resulting in more teacher-to-student time. The benefits of concurrent instruction include being able to deliver content synchronously while allowing parents to have their students who stay at home for health and safety reasons to remain in the same class as they are currently in with their peers and to remain with their teachers. As with our transition to remote learning in the spring, this method would require additional time for teachers and students to adjust and gain capacity in order to implement this in the manner that we would want it to be implemented in. Next slide, please. So this prompts us to think of additional options that we can transition our students back to school while still providing them with support. And so option two is transition with small group instruction, which would be for TK through 2 and all elementary SDC, mild, moderate, and mod severe. Again, this is a sample schedule with the schedules for each site being determined by the principal. For option two, remote instruction would continue in the mornings as it is currently occurring, with students being able to participate and access with their schedules and routines that they have become accustomed to in the last 2 months. In the afternoons on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, or Fridays, students would attend small group instruction with their teachers. Initially, we would begin with each small cohort coming in 1 afternoon a week, and then gradually increase to 2 days a week as conditions allow. At-home learners would have access to the small group instruction via Zoom or Google Meet, thereby allowing teachers to develop their capacity to utilize concurrent instruction while less students are physically in the classroom. Next slide, please. Our Harvest Park Preschool includes special day class students and general education students that are part of our iPals program. And tonight we bring to the trustees a slightly different model in which our preschool students would come back on a 2-1-2 model, meaning that half the students would return on Monday and Tuesday. Wednesdays would continue to be whole group virtual lessons and the cleaning in between groups. And Thursdays and Fridays would result in the other half of our students coming back. Next slide, please. So at this point in time, I will pass it to Superintendent Haglund.
Dave, you might be muted.
Thank you. During our town hall sessions, repeating because I didn't have my mic on, we gave different questions, one for the employees and one for the families or the community members. So they're not exactly the same as they were with our first poll. With the staff, we asked them specifically about concurrent instruction and how they felt in terms of their readiness to implement concurrent instruction at this point in time. And you can see that only about 25% of them or so, maybe not even that, 23.5 or 24% of them felt that they were ready or that they thought they could do it if we provided them with professional development and some support. A chunk of them, about 30%, 31% of them weren't really sure yet about their ability because I think partially they're just not well aware of what that model might look like. And also, are they going to have the tools that they would need and what are the supports that they would get? So there's some concern there. And about 45% of the teachers did not feel that that was a manageable model for them at this point in time. And it's important to note that this is a new model. So it's not as though we're asking them to do the same thing, just a little bit differently. It really is significantly different. The question that we posed to the community was really to rate their feelings regarding the readiness to have their students return to school. And we propose so that we have the text on the right-hand side of the slide because it's important to know what options they had to choose from. So the green 21 approximately percent of the students felt that their students need to get back to school, even with the increased risk and the need for distancing that would be required. The blue 24% said they would prefer maintaining remote learning, but would like some time for their students on campus. And then the yellow, remote learning is going well for us, but I'm concerned about the social and emotional wellness of my student. So there may be a strategy there we could implement to address just emotional wellness on top of the other supports that we're providing, and the issue of social isolation, which I think is a very real thing for our students. And then 26% or 36% of our community members said that they really would prefer to stay with remote learning until there's a vaccine or an effective treatment. So we learned a lot. Now this is not all of our community members or all of our parents, but it is over 1,000 that participated in this one question, and that's a pretty good sample size to give us an understanding of how folks are feeling. So we wanted to share that with you as we go through this. And then with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. D'Alazzo. I'm sorry, Mr. Hernandez.
Thank you. Good evening, President Maher, Board of Trustees, Superintendent Haglund, staff, Executive Cabinet, and community. The first item is negotiations. So as Dr. Haglund and Dr. Woodward mentioned, we are going to need to negotiate either a model, depending on the direction of the board this evening, because they are different from what was discussed when we first entered into COVID-19. Including, we're going to have to negotiate the current health guidance, which Mr. D'Alazzo mentioned. We're on version 14, and when we negotiated our MOU, it was version 1, as well as other mandatory subjects of bargaining that the associations may bring up. Thank you. Next slide. So we are still availing or allowing, because it's legally required, to engage our employees in the interactive process. And what this means is if there's an employee that feels for medical reasons that they're unable to perform their duties, we do engage them in what is called the interactive process, which allows the employee to explain why they could not perform their duties. And if they have a doctor's note, what does that mean as far as accommodations? And then we will engage those employees in accommodations, one of which can be working remotely. So there is a process that we involved them in, and Nancy Bronzini in our HR department is leading the efforts in the interactive process. Thank you. Next slide. So currently we do have the staffing of the small cohort program, which we activated this Wednesday. We have special needs. We have 20 cohorts that are staffed by 66 staff members with a ratio of 3 students to 1 staff member. We also have general education RSP cohorts. There's 15 of those. McKinney-Vento students, as well as students that have been identified as vulnerable, meaning that they are struggling in remote learning, were invited to participate in these cohorts. And that's a ratio of 7 students to 1 staff member. Thank you. Next slide. We do have programs that have been on campus. Kids Club since the summer. We do have 220 students participating in that program, and we have 40 staff members. The child care program, which is our employee child care program, we have 9 students with 4 staff members supporting that program since September 14th. The small cohort program began October 14th, a couple of days ago. 285 students with 96 staff members. All of these are present physically at our schools and our various sites in our district. Thank you. Next slide. And as far as physically present, we do have 100% of our administrators reporting physically to the sites or the district office. We do have 27% of our certificated teachers. That's about 218 teachers. And the way we obtain this information is that staff reports to the principal if they're physically returning to school, so that we could track what facilities they're using, including their classrooms, so that they can be cleaned and disinfected. So it's about 27%. Again, that is a voluntary basis. We have not required them, again, to return. Classified staff, we now have about 82% of our classified staff that it is reporting physically to work. We do have a number of our classified staff that have availed themselves of the interactive process and have taken leaves. Thank you. I think that is last slide. Thank you, Dr. Haglund.
Remembering to do my mic. Okay, at the end of our presentation, we asked the same questions that we asked at the beginning of the town halls. And so in both cases, you can see if you compare the 2 charts, you can see that there were some slight shifts in the data. In the employee survey, there were an additional 50 people that had logged on, so it's not a true comparison because the group size grew, but you can see that both the yellow and the red area grew after the conversation. In the parents, it went the opposite direction. And so, but they broke it, it's pretty much broke into quarters, 25, 25, 25, not quite that, but fairly close. So it was important. We wanted to get a dipstick test about how people feel after they've heard about the preparations and blah, blah, blah. And I think what the data tells us is that our staff is still concerned, and our parents, they're wanting to get their students back engaged in things in the community. And so after knowing of some of the protocols, I think there was a little bit of relaxation in those numbers, but not a significant amount. All right, next slide, Patrick. So the outcomes for tonight, we want to review our school reopening plan and checklist. We want to have the board consider the recommendations from cabinet. We want to ask you to provide direction as to a model and to the timeline, and then approve submission based on those recommendations of our reopening plan and checklist to the Alameda County Office of Education. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Woodward to talk through our recommendation.
Thank you, Dr. Haglund. So based upon the information that we have collected and the careful planning that we have done, it is my recommendation that we begin the transition to reopening school by first implementing option 2, in which students receive small group instruction in the afternoon on their assigned day, And for the Harvest Park Preschool, we go with the 2-1-2 model.
Excuse me, we're placing the options, 2 slides back up on the screen to allow for you to ask questions and to guide our conversation. President Maher, do you want to lead the questioning?
Well, okay. When I look at this model here where it's Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, so teachers would come back be in their classroom to receive those students 1 o'clock to 2:30. Is that how I'm reading that correctly?
So that is correct, President Maher. They would have their students in class for potentially 90 minutes in the afternoon. They would have approximately 6 students in every small cohort. And so the instruction in the morning would be done via remote, as it is now currently occurring. And so in the afternoon, we would have a Monday group of students that would come in, and they would have that one-on-one time, well, in a small group with their teachers. And then on Tuesday, a different cohort would come in. On Thursdays, another cohort, and then again on Friday.
What if students still opt to stay home?
So the beauty of this model, one strength of it is that the principals would work with their teachers to group the students, so we could look at the numbers for each classroom and better make that determination. In addition, if there was a need for that concurrent instruction that we discussed earlier, knowing that we've never done this before, as Dr. Haglund stated, and that there would be a learning curve for this, it does allow our teachers to have a little bit of time in implementing concurrent instruction with a much smaller group of students at one time. So the students who are at home could Zoom in if needed. It might also work that on one day a week, the at-home students would be able to Zoom in, depending upon the numbers in the class, because the teachers may not have students physically in person on that day. Happy to answer any additional questions.
Anybody on the board? Do you have other questions?
Yeah, I was just wondering, okay, so I don't know if you really answered Trustee Maher's question or not, but if in this class, there's a couple students that want 100% remote, would they stay with their same class? And how would that work?
Sure, absolutely. So when we look at a class of 24 students, let's just say hypothetically that 6 of those students wanted to continue to stay home. So on Monday, the teacher could meet with 6 in-person students. Tuesday, another 6. And then potentially say on Wednesday or Friday, the teacher would then meet with the at-home students in the afternoon for their small group time. And so it would not result in any students needing to change classes. They would be able to stay put, and the teachers would be able to continue the great work that they're already doing with the students that they know.
How about if we had teachers that were just couldn't come in because of health or someone in the home that has mitigating circumstances? How would we handle that afternoon if they couldn't come in because of legitimate reasons?
So I'm going to pass that question to Mr. Hernandez, our Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources.
President Maher, so our staff would still be afforded their rights to take a leave. We would consider then bringing in another adult in the way of a substitute or other supporting staff, so that teacher will still be able to teach remotely and have an adult present to supervise the students while that instruction is taking place. We are also considering a possible job share where a teacher may do the remote while their partner teacher does the present physical. That would take some navigating with partner teachers within that school. So there are at least 2 ways that we could address that concern, that we still have students physically coming to school and having that social emotional learning as well as learning with adults present, and still allowing our teachers to work remotely or partnering with another teacher so that we don't have a sub, or bring in any substitute to be able to support our students physically while the teacher of record is teaching remotely.
Would
So
that be
I
a
hope Mr.
partial leave?
Well, no, Mr.
No.
Maher, what I was going to suggest is that I hope what you can see in the plan is that we're trying to accommodate the requests of both the staff and the families when it comes to remote learning. This is the best model that the team could come up to do that. So if you think of maybe as our elementary teachers are doing in their intervention times, or they do what's called, I think they've been calling it platooning, where certain groups of kids are matched with certain teachers for a portion of the day. So I'm not thinking that we need to drive the decision as to how the teams at the schools decide to solve that particular problem. I think the first opportunity is to let them collaborate with one another to see if they can't solve it so that that teacher can do the remote learning in the morning and then do remote groups with students in the afternoon while the other teachers might take more physical students, physically present students on campus. So that's just a thought. But again, I don't know that we want to drive the plan so specifically that our teachers can't engage their own creativity in the process of developing the local plans.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a really great idea to let them figure it out, because their teachers are really great problem solvers and they know their campus and they know their coworkers well. So I think that makes a lot of sense. But I'm just kind of wondering, I feel like we don't have enough data. Like, we don't know exactly which kids, want to come in person, which ones want to stay home 100%. And we also don't know that exact number for our staff as well. So I feel like it's hard to tell, because what comes up for me is, if we're job sharing or co-teaching in some way and we're adding another staff person to a classroom, there's going to be a budget implication. So it would just be good to know what that is, as we move this along. But I do agree that, the teachers are absolutely, and the principals together could figure out more of the details.
Dr. Haglund, if I may. So our collective bargaining agreement stipulates that the schedules, or the way that the programs are programmed, that's double program, the way the plan is carried out, are developed by the staff at the sites. So that's what our collective bargaining agreement says already. The principal does ultimately make the final decision with the input of the faculty. So I think it given them that liberty to be able to brainstorm solutions to that. As far as the impact financially, we will accommodate our staff that needs leaves to remain teachers of record. So they will still be performing duty, they will still be working, getting paid. It would be sort of what our current cohort models will be. Currently, we would either have classified staff who are already getting paid. That doesn't mean that it won't be perfect, but we will have to tap into either our certificated substitute pool or other adults if need be. But again, we will have to do that analysis depending on how much staff trustee Yee, and we won't know that until we ask our staff to determine if they will be taking leaves or not.
Trustee
Oh, just one more thing. Julio, what do we have? I remember we have some sort of guidance for how many job shares we can have. Do we have I kind of remember we had a maximum on that. And so will we change that? What's our situation with job shares?
So there is no guidance from the county. We don't have any collective bargaining agreement language that limits the amount of our job shares. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure, Trustee Yee, the question, but there is no limitation to that. It depends on the need that we have and the interest that our staff will engage in.
Yeah, and I would add that whatever policy we have that's going to inhibit our ability to service students is a policy that we can adjust during this time.
Okay. And then I just want to make one last comment, and then I'll be quiet. In regards to the survey, I did have a question about that, because it was open, to all staff and all grade level of parents. But we're really talking about, just TK2. So I don't know if people who voted who don't teach TK2 and parents who don't have a TK2 answered the survey. And I guess it's not maybe as important on the parent one because we're just asking about how they felt. But on the staff one, I think that would be more important to know if, because I don't know that it's fair really for a secondary teacher to be weighing in on an option for TK2.
Jamie, I think Dave is going to have Dave, you can speak to this. I know I've already talked to you.
Sure. I think these were just polls. They were not surveys of the impacted employees or the impacted families. And so we have work to do. Once we decide what the plan is, we will engage with the teachers in these grade levels. We will engage with the families in those grade levels, and we will have those more detailed conversations. And you're right, talking to the impacted individuals will give us more significant data to act on. And so, but that's next week. That's not prior to the conversation.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Trustee Arkin, do you have questions?
Yes. One of the questions I have is, doesn't matter actually what option we go with. What would be the earliest that we would start in-person instruction? I know we're waiting on the filters. What realistically, are we talking mid-November or what date are we talking?
So as we get a little bit farther into the conversation, we're going to look at the calendar related to activities that go on at the school, which I think will inform some of that decision. I don't want to be flippant, but at the same time, the date really doesn't matter, right? We're going to decide on a date. If you look at the plan, which we're going to review on the next slide, it says not before this date. It doesn't say by that date. And so we're also going to talk about some I don't want to call them hurdles necessarily, but there are some bars that we need to cross with regards to the PPE and some other things. And so that will impact our ability to act on a date. But we still need to submit our plan. We still need to continue working towards it, or we can't move forward. And so waiting until we have everything in place to submit the plan puts us even further out. And so what I've tried to say in the town halls and to our employee groups as we've talked to them is that the date it's only a date. If we say to the county that we're going to open on November 7th, and we get to November 7th and we're not ready to do it, or approaching November 7th and we're not ready to meet that criteria, we're not going to open on November 7th. And there's no penalty for not hitting the date that you said to the county you were hoping to do. So hopefully everybody can kind of take a breath and realize that we're not changing our commitment that we've made, that we're going to do this in a way that's safe for our students, safe for our families, safe for our teachers, safe for our classified staff. We're not moving away from that position, but we also want to make sure that we're putting things into action so that as the numbers continue to be positive, we're ready to go. Does that answer your question?
It does. I think what I was getting at depending on the PPE and everything we have to do on our checklist to get ready. I think this was brought up in the prior meetings, and actually Superintendent Hagelin, you brought it up about the Thanksgiving holiday, the winter break holiday, yes. And that being, a risk we're going to be taking by opening before then. So that's why I was trying to just gauge if we had an idea on
Sure, and I think
estimate.
It's important to update the information about travel because the state updated their guidance and the quarantines are no longer required. And so they're giving guidance to families about what to avoid if and when you travel. And if you come into contact or get exposed to a situation where you believe you're put at risk, then you should voluntarily hold back your child, do remote learning until it's time to come back. But because someone might not follow the protocols, it doesn't mean we need to stop everybody else from engaging. And so I think we've got a plan for that. The other thing with regards to checklist, and if you want, we can kind of get into the checklist next, which will help you see where we're at with that. But if you have additional questions, you can go there too.
Well, for now, the only other question I have, and this came up from people in the public, asked with the doors and windows being open, the security risks to our campuses with allowing doors and windows to be open. So can you maybe just touch on that? Because that's come up at least a couple of times with me from people in the community.
Mr. Sheikh Salami.
Sure, that's a good question. Each of our campuses has different, fencing and position of our buildings are differently. The age of the students, special ed compared to, third, fourth, or fifth graders or middle school. So there's the varying circumstances. In many circumstances, leaving a door open might be safe and there's no issue. But then again, if you're in a class with a runner, then you have to think about something. Maybe there's a gate can be put in. If your door can be open to an interior space of the school, then obviously it's different than if there's no fencing and it opens up to a road. So it's very particular to certain situations, and that's why the guidelines is to increase outside air. And we've done that with the mechanical units by opening up the air intake from the outside. Additionally, opening doors and stuff helps. So where we can do it, we should take advantage of that. And then the filtration and any of the purifiers adds that next level of best practices that again, we're pursuing. But it is one of those things that everyone is trying to pursue. And so we have those orders in, and as soon as we get them, we'll deploy them.
Okay, thank you. And as we go with TK2, it's still on the same, we're doing that one first, then 3-5, and it's still in a staggered.
So the plan that the board approved in July 14th is still our plan. We're making slight modifications to how we roll it out, but it's still focused on the same grade levels. And there were a few other minor tweaks that I think Dr. Woodward already covered.
And Trustee Arkin, it would be TK2, and it would also be all elementary SDC students, grades 3 through 5.
Dr. Hagelin, the county hasn't even allowed us to look at middle school or high school as yet, correct?
Yeah, I was just going to jump in and say that in the original plan, we said SDC K through 12. We're not going into the middle and the high school because as of right now, the county has not authorized us to open middle or high schools.
That's all I have for right now.
Trustee Larson?
I don't really have any questions. I have comments, so I'll wait till the end of the presentation.
Okay. Trustee Miller?
My question is that why don't we have option 3, which is continue 100% remote learning?
That is always an option. That is always an option. We could stay in remote learning.
So then my follow-up question to that is that I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you must have a reason for not recommending that option in favor of option 2. I think we've touched on social emotional learning as being the 1 day a week kind of thing, is getting them together. But is that your thinking exactly? Or?
Yes, Trustee Miller. So we know that remote learning is working well for most of our students. There are some students that are struggling with isolation. And there are also some students that maybe are not in an optimal learning environment within their home. But because of the significant time that it does take for our teachers to plan the outstanding lessons that they're planning, we wanted to keep that morning time intact. Because what they're doing, it is quality time, but we know that our students need connections. In addition, the survey data does tell us that while parents are hesitant to send their students back, they indicate the need for some sort of interaction. And now with the updated county guidance saying that students can have 2 cohorts, bringing them in, even with a group of 6, is something that they get to look forward to, and then they finally get to see their teacher in person in a safe space. And so we're hopeful that even for some of our students who are at-home learners, they might feel more comfortable actually having that experience in person. Another thing that we found this past week with the the small cohort supervision program is the gratitude expressed by our families for the students who were finally able to access instruction in a different way than they had been able to access it, because we were providing the small cohort supervision in the morning. And just to be clear, our intention, pending staffing, is to be able to continue the support of the small cohorts in the morning, the supervision in the morning for the students that are in those programs, and that is TK through 12. And then we layer on the small group instruction for students in the afternoon.
And Mark, I would actually say that that's the magic of the plan, is that it allows for the remote instruction to continue, but those support groups that we've established for students who really, really needed it stay in place. They don't get pushed off of the campus. And so that's one of the things that attracts me to this proposal.
Yeah. And having seen that today with you, thank you for the invitation for that. I can definitely see where the value is there. I guess my only other question is, are we open to increasing the numbers of those small cohort classes? We just have done it based on voluntary right now from a student perspective, but if more students wanted to do that,
So Mark, if I could jump in there, the answer is yes to that. The issue is securing the staffing resources to make it happen. And so you remember you approved 3 positions, hourly positions, and we're recruiting for those positions right now. As those additional staff members come on board, the intent is to continue opening additional cohorts.
Actually, that gets back to the question I asked you yesterday. So along the same lines, which, it is true that our staff has been doing an amazing job, and for probably the vast majority of our students, things are going well. But that is not true for all of our students. And it's also, even within the invitations that were sent out for the small group cohorts, even sometimes it's been difficult to reach families whose students are still in our community, but and we have an obligation to educate, and they are not being reached with remote or even this outreach that's happened so far. And then we're going to, as we're going to talk a little bit more about, I hope, in terms of the statistics and the data for Alameda County, at the end of the month, we are opening back up in terms of employment. So we have families which is a downside right now, of course, who've been unemployed, and then now their unemployment has run out and the extra money has run out. And so the businesses that are going to start reopening, those employees are going to need to go back to work. And we have an obligation to educate those students. And so I would hope that we would be able to offer spaces to students in circumstances where, maybe they don't meet those other criteria, but they need to be in class.
Yeah, sure. And this is a recruiting opportunity. So if you're looking for a part-time job and you meet the criteria and you want to work with kids, we'd love to have you apply for one of those positions so that we can open up additional cohorts. And so it's a full court press. Absolutely. We need to do all of this and do all of this well. We've talked about this before. The level of complexity is not even quite understandable. And yet our staff are making it happen. And, the HR department is doing all these what we call them interactive conversations with staff to ensure that we're helping them in every way that we possibly can. They're also hiring for these other positions. And I know Janelle's clamoring for additional staff so she can open up additional cohorts. So you're right, absolutely. It's not just about those kids that meet a particular criteria. This is a strategy that we can use to meet anybody who needs that level of support because it's not working for them right now.
Along those same lines, we are saying that most of our kids, and I've had people give me feedback that remote's been great for them, but then there are also those who remote is really difficult. So would those kids be allowed, or would that be an option for them to join a small cohort if remote learning is, really not that great for them? And it really, for all grade levels, I know we're talking about TK through 2 right now, and I know that we can't open it all the way up because we don't have staff. So how would that work? Is is there some way that the people that are struggling in remote could get on the, the small cohort with supervision support?
Yeah, I think principals they've got lists of students that they're reaching out to. We focused heavily on special ed students initially, but we also included English learners, but that was largely because of the small number of staff that we had to deploy immediately. But as we move forward and we get additional staffing resources, then absolutely, yes, they should be able to participate. Janelle?
They could open more grades, but I guess that's the question, is opening more grades for that support.
So Trustee Yee, the small cohort supervision program is currently open for TK through 12th grade students. Yes, so we were at all of the schools. I think Cabinet's been at all of the schools this past week, and we saw phenomenal things happening with our elementary schools, with our middle schools, and with our high schools. In terms of the adding additional students on, all of our principals have students that are struggling on a watch list. So as more and more staff come on board, or staff are willing to return and work to support this, they have students that they can identify. I spoke with an elementary principal the other day who indicated that this is great that we got this started, and he has another group of 14 ready to go. So I can tell you that we have the capacity at our sites to continue to grow this small cohort supervision program. I can also say with full transparency that going to the sites yesterday and seeing the kids was the happiest day I've had since we went on break. Or not break, but on COVID. I would not, absolutely, just to clarify, not call this a break. This has not been a break.
That was sort of like Friends, Ross, we're on a break comment, kind of. It hasn't been a break. So I want to further make my point, though. So some of these students, some of these families are struggling, not necessarily the student is struggling. And so will there be an opportunity, like right now, if you can afford it, you're paying for private school so that you and your spouse can do your job, or you're paying for a kids club so that you and your spouse can do your job. And so if you can't afford it and you're out of work, but now you're going to be going back to work, but yet your kid is not on the watch list because they're doing pretty well in remote, but you don't have any other choice. I'm looking for us to do our responsibility to take care of those children and school them at the same time. And I know people get really upset about the idea that, that we are considering teachers just childcare workers, and they're not. But that is part of our obligation, is to take care of these children.
Well, there's absolutely no question that part of our role as an educational organization within a community is to support both of those functions during the school day. In a pandemic, when the government is giving us direction to not do that, like right now we have direction to not do secondary students, we have to pay attention to the guidance that we're getting from the
correct. But I'm speaking more of the current TK through 2 students.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, we absolutely can do that. The other thing is that as additional resources, additional staffing come into play, it's not like there's a checklist that says you have to meet this criteria or that criteria. So it's important that parents reach out to the principal to get on that list. And as those cohorts are started, they can be put into a cohort. There's nothing that would stop that from happening. The other thing is that just like we have, we're hiring these hourly positions, I've had teachers come to me and say, can I do a cohort with my kids? And so the answer to that is, sure, you can. We're not forcing that at this particular point in time, but yes, and frankly, that's what our music teachers have been doing and our athletic coaches have been doing since this summer. And so, yes, you can do cohorts outside of bringing people back to school. And so there's a whole bunch of different models. And even though we haven't been given permission to kind of click it up at the secondary level, it's still happening at the secondary level. And we want to encourage that. And Ed wanted to add something.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Haglund. I wanted to add a comment about the cohorts. So, and you kind of read my mind there, Dr. Haglund. It's okay. It's flexible. I mean, that's the nice thing about the small cohort supervision program, is that we can open more cohorts, different grade levels, different types of groupings based on staffing, of course, as we've all already talked about. One thing I want to point out about the small cohorts is The language in the county public health guidance is stable and consistent. So once we establish that cohort, we meet that threshold of stable and consistent after 3 weeks. So we have a little bit of a window right now to still add kids, but that has to end soon. And what I mean by end is, okay, then now that cohort is set, and then we have the 3-week window that is now stable, then we could start adding kids back in. So we still have a little bit of window. I want to make that little nuance there, that we have that window still. It's been 3 days of the cohorts. We could still add kids, but eventually we need to kind of stop and say that's one cohort, leave it at that, and then go to the next cohort. Second point, our special day classes, the students, that in and of itself is a self-contained class, which to me equals a cohort. So the kids then could, it's a little bit more flexible in terms of when they can add to those classes, because those are the students that they will be with should the class open. So it's a little bit of a nuance there in terms of the special day class, moderate, severe, mild, moderate cohorts. We can add kids to those because those are the kids that are essentially in those classes anyway. So I wanted to make that point for the general ed cohorts, that once we establish that stable group, we kind of have to stop adding them. We would just have to have another cohort, frankly.
Yeah, so you can add another cohort, you just can't continually rotate that one.
That's right.
Mr. Dialazzo, have we been able to take all the students that the principals recommended?
So the quick answer is yes. Have all the students attended that we've recommended? No. So the cohorts, as I mentioned in the SDC classes, they still have room, and plenty of room, to take on the kids that we've invited. But the general ed cohorts, actually the ones that I've seen, are also not full. So I don't know if Dr. Woodward has the percentages on that, but we still have room for the kids to participate in the cohorts that we've established, and the ones that we've invited. I know not all the kids have attended this week.
Right.
I'm just concerned that our principals will be getting phone calls now with a large amount of students that want to come into cohorts, which I think is a good thing, but we may not have staff, and I don't want to get an unrealistic expectation.
Correct. The principals and their teams invited groups of students to the cohorts. Not all of the parents who were invited chose to send their students to participate. And Dr. Woodward, you might want to expand on that.
Absolutely. And they, as I stated earlier, the principals do have other students that they want to invite. And so there is, if I were to ask all of our principals, do you have 14 more students that you could add to a cohort next week? They would all say absolutely yes. Yeah. So we hope to gain additional staff so that we can continue to grow this. It is working well. I can tell you several examples that have happened this week at some of our sites where students who had not been engaging in remote instruction were able to not only engage, but to complete assignments. So it's been very, very wonderful to be able to get this started. I'm so thankful for the support of Human Resources and helping our staff so that they can be involved in this. But certainly, President Maher, we do hope to grow this and to add more students and to be mindful of the request from Trustee Larson. I think that is important, that we need to support our families in this manner as well.
I can't tell you that I visited this week at Dave and your suggestion, and we walked through some classes, although I did it on FaceTime, whatever that was, and I saw some great things going on. And in fact, I saw one teacher do a concurrent lesson with his kids in class, the kids he was Zooming with, and quite frankly, it went fine. They're all joined in. And
I have a question though that, I'm thinking about the, our AM PM option that is being recommended. So I've brought this up before, pretty much every time we talk about this. So when we're surveying, we really need to survey the childcare situation. People are going to be going back to work. The AM PM may not really work great for a lot of people. So we really need to make sure that we're surveying and really understanding what the childcare needs are for our families. I think that's really critical. And then how does that play into, would that be their second stable cohort if they're in kids club? So
it would.
yeah, so we really need to consider that.
Dr. Woodward, as we start to move forward here with the plan that you're suggesting, have we looked at, I don't want to use the word hurdles that Dr. Haglund used, but obstacles maybe that may get in the way, such as, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but we have like teacher conferences coming up in November?
So Steve, we're going to get to that in just a little bit, if that's okay.
No, that's fine.
I have a couple questions on the option 2. So number one is do we know any other districts that are doing this type of thing, or is this an innovation for Pleasanton alone?
I'm not aware of any other districts that have come up with an alternative model like this at this time.
Okay. Right now, other districts are looking at either come full back hybrid or stay remote.
Mm-hmm. And I like the innovation. Have teachers been consulted on the model to this point, and this concept of remote for the morning and then a small cohort on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday? Do we have any sense that how they feel about it?
So during our employee town hall, this model was shared just like this, and we received an abundance of comments and questions. And I know that our principals have also been talking about this with their staff to some extent. So we looked through all of the questions, and I've had some follow-up conversations as well with a few teachers, and I've been able to gain their feedback on that.
Is the sense that it will be positively received by them? Or?
I believe that from my knowledge and the information that I have, that the sense that a gradual return is preferred, and an opportunity to be able to get to know students in a smaller group, and to allow them to continue to have the time that they need to plan the remote instruction. Because really what this is it's a trade-off. As soon as we start bringing students back, then we don't have the time, our teachers don't have the same level of time to plan for their remote instruction. So if we were to go with the AMP model with the concurrent instruction, things will look different. Right now, our families and our students have gotten used to having the teachers right there in front of them all throughout the day, and being able to get sometimes very instant responses to questions. As well, our teachers have office hours. So as soon as we bring students back on campus, that some of that has to shift, because it's not feasible for our teachers to continue to engage in those same things that they're doing now. So return to school doesn't mean the same thing as return to normal.
No.
Because our normal is different now. So, but in terms of the option 2, this is a more gradual transition that can lead to that.
Yeah, I'm definitely not supportive of option 1. So then speaking of, again, final question on option 2, I'm trying to picture, okay, they're normal what they're doing today in the morning, and then you've got 6 people each Monday, Tuesday. Mm-hmm. What in TK to 2, what do we see that 2-hour, 1.5 hour period being like? I mean, what is it, oh, that's reserved for math, or I mean, how would we do?
Well, that's a great question. There is so much that the teachers could do in that time. I think initially, and I can't speak for our teachers because they all know exactly what they would do. They have that. They are so forward thinking, but I think that the connections would need to be a priority. And I know that we want to continue to grow our rigor and our academic achievement, but we also have to be very mindful that the social emotional needs of our students can get in the way of that learning if we're not being responsive. So I would think at least initially, as our students would be there in masks and our teachers would be there in masks, then it's not going to have the same feel of a classroom. You wouldn't walk in and see students at a kidney-shaped table like you maybe would, but that getting to know each other. And then also it could be used for intervention. It could be used for enrichment. It could be used for that guided practice. It could be used for that assessment. It could be used to do some outside activities. It could be used in a variety of ways. And the other thing, and I didn't note this earlier, so I'm just kind of throwing it in, is that option 2 also allows us to keep our specialist schedules in place more effectively, thereby providing our students with the music instruction and the PE instruction that is really valuable in Pleasanton, and also allowing us to uphold our contractual responsibility to give our teachers prep times.
So I have a couple other things. I know that the board is asking, kind of a lot of detailed questions, but I think we're just trying to envision what this would look like. I don't want anybody to think that we're trying to micromanage and tell teachers how to do their job, because for me anyway, that's not the intention here. We're just trying to picture what this would look like for our kids, right? But I'm just wondering, timing wise, because I think that's, as I said before in the last meeting, this is kind of the anxiety part that parents are having, getting some sort of timing. So
I think we're going to do that a little later, Dave said.
Oh, we are? Okay, then I'll wait. But
Correct,
I think,
Dave? Correct? Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay, then I'll wait. I'll come back to that.
Anything else?
Adrian?
Oh, yeah, you know what? This probably fits in here. And I don't know if you know the answer to it or not, but I'm just kind of curious, do we know how much, let's say we approve this plan and there's a sort of a target date, but is that target date realistic? How much time does it really take for the elementary sites to do this planning, for them to get their logistics worked out and, figure out who's doing what? How much time is that? Can they do that in 2 weeks? Do they need 3 weeks, or is it a week? I don't have any idea. Is there any thought about that?
Trustee Yee, so in our MOU, we give 10 days notice from the time that the board makes a decision, which could be today, for that preparation to take place for our staff. I just want to reiterate, once that notice is given, we're trying to do two things, and one of them is to support our current staff and to ensure that their rights are protected, that they're given the leaves, at the same time giving them an opportunity to continue to teach remotely. And then bring in staff. We're recruiting aggressively, so anybody who's interested, you could go into EdJoin and go into Pleasanton Unified School District. If you're interested in subbing, we will go over the requirements for that, which minimally is to have a bachelor's degree or any other of the classified positions. So it really is staff driven. The intent is to still be able to keep the cohorts open. So whereas the students who may be in the morning being taken care of for that 1 hour and 25 minutes, I believe, it still doesn't preclude them from going to their second cohort, which may be the cohort that they're currently in, so that they will have not just childcare, but instruction still going on for that time period. So again, it's very labor-intensive, staff-driven, and we're trying to make sure that both sides are being taken care of, meaning our staff needs, as well as primarily our student needs.
So I'm just thinking about the timing, though. We have conferences are coming up, and then there's the Thanksgiving break.
So like we said, we're going to get to the calendar in just a minute.
Okay, I know. I keep getting to the calendar thing.
Any other comments about this particular item here? Okay, Dave.
So let's go ahead and go there now. So if it's okay. So the other thing to remember about that trigger is the trigger sets off the interactive process with individuals. And so if we don't hit the trigger and let people know that this is coming, then they're not going to engage in that process, and we won't have time to get through that process with them. And part of that process is the establishment of saying that, yes, there is an opportunity for you who have an issue at home with related to personal health concerns to continue to teach remotely. But we have to identify who those people are, and that process is the legal way through which we should do that. And so that's one of the purposes of kind of flipping the switch early, is to give us time to go through that process, so we're not trying to rush it at the end. All right, on this next slide, Patrick, there are two links. Another one. There we go. There are two links. The one on the right is our checklist, and the one on the left is our reopening plan narrative. And anybody who has had a chance to review the agenda and see the attachment has already looked at the narrative, but they've not seen the checklist. So let's open the checklist first, Patrick. And remember that the requirements in the checklist are much less rigorous than what we've established for ourselves within the narrative. And so as you just scan up through that, you'll note that all of the boxes on the checklist, the things that they require, are checked. So we are good to send in the checklist. That's different than our implementation plan or our reopening plan, which has higher standards. So as an example, we're required to put as much recycled air into classrooms as possible with the systems that are there. We want to do more than that. So in many cases, we have higher standards in our narrative than the county has requested of us. So just because you see all those checks on that one, make sure you read the other one so that you can understand the level of sophistication of the plan. So we can close that one, Patrick. People can look at it on their own time. The other document on the other side of the page is the narrative. So if you open that one and blow it up a little bit, Patrick, so people can kind of see it. So you're going to recognize some of my words. So there's, on the fourth line of that page, you'll note that it says date of reopening, and the language says no sooner than November 2nd, and identifies the grade levels. And I want to reiterate, it's no sooner than. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen then. It just means that we're locking ourselves in to say it's not going to happen prior to that date. The plan of submission is to be determined. We'll correct it tonight, assuming that the board approves the submission of the plan. If the board doesn't approve the submission of the plan, whatever date you do approve it, then we'll put that date there. And as you scan through the document, and Patrick, people can take their own time to look through the document. We're not going to go through it. You've had an opportunity as trustees to look through the details. But you'll note that the cleaning and disinfecting, the cohorting is all in there. The physical distancing requirements, how we're going to do that, how we're going to monitor coming onto and going off of campus, both for students and for staff. The face coverings and protective gear is addressed in there. And often, as in health screenings for student and staff, there's links to other documents or other guidance. So those are considered to be a part of the plan. We didn't have to rewrite it all within the narrative. We could simply link to the documents. Hygiene practices, tracing of contacts, staff training and family education, those are in there. A whole bunch of videos that we're using in training of our staff are there, so anybody can see those. And then on page 8 of the document, you get to the testing of staff, which is recommended. And we just got notification on Tuesday, I believe, that the county had established the contract with a provider. And so those details will be provided by the county, and we will be bringing to the board a kind of like a piggyback agreement so that we can join their testing contract with the testing provider. The protocols and the requirements for distancing are all in there. Our consultation, our notes from how we consulted with our both our community and our associations are in there, as well as, again, a whole bunch of different links at the bottom. That is the only thing. Those two documents are what we're required to submit to the county. Once we do that, we have a green light. That doesn't mean that we're ready to open. It's important that everybody understands that. We will open, I've said this 25 times probably by now, when it's safe for our students and our families and our staff, including our classified and our certificated staff. But we can't do anything without a plan. So that's the plan that's being brought forward tonight, and I'm glad you've taken time to review it. I do want to go to the next slide. If you can get out of that and click to the next slide, Patrick. We've identified what we're calling influencing factors, which is why we gave the no sooner than date, because there's still some things that we have to either to nail down or they're unknowns at this particular point in time. So we have to negotiate the impact and effect of this plan with our associations. So the trigger of the approval of the plan starts the process of negotiating with the associations to negotiate the impact and effect of the detailed plan. Did I say that good enough, Mr. Hernandez?
Yes, Dr. Hamilton.
Thank you. And then the issue of processing any potential leave requests, that what Julio identified as the interactive process. It gets triggered. That will tell us who can be there, who would prefer to work remotely, and who actually does go on leave, which means that determines the number of subs that we need. And so again, shameless plug for recruiting for individuals who are looking for opportunities to work at Pleasanton Unified School District as substitutes or hourly employees with our student groups. Come on down. We'd love to have you. Also, planning for holiday travel. Although it's no longer required to quarantine for state-to-state travel, there are still some recommendations for self-quarantining with international travel. We need to make sure that we've communicated all that with our staff, and it really has to do with where you went and what the conditions on the ground are where you were. And so we would need to work with families with regards to that. We talked about this last Thursday, so I want to say it again, and I'm hoping everybody will listen really, really careful to this part. This plan provides safety for students and staff when they're on campus. That's it. Students are only on campus for a portion of their day and a portion of the days of the week. And so if we as a community can't come together and apply these types of safety standards in our lives, then the safety that we're providing on the campus is going to be compromised. So yes, it's frustrating that you can't get out and do all the things that you want to do. But you're not just making decisions that are going to impact you or even your family, especially when schools start to reopen. Because all of those decisions get carried with your student onto the campuses. And so my request to the community is to be cautious. If we can continue practicing caution, we can continue to keep the spread rate low. But if we're careless, we're going to walk into things that we just don't want to walk into. Nobody wants to, least alone me. I've shared before, I feel personally responsible for each one of our teachers and classified staff members and their families. I also feel responsible for every one of the students that come to our schools and their families. So this decision is really, really complicated, and I don't have a whole lot of ability to control some of the aspects of it. I need you to partner with me in this work. If we do that, we can keep people safe. So I'll get off that soapbox for a little bit. The other issue is that we've got to, we talked about procurement and deployment of resources that we have. As Mr. Sheikho Salami said, we do have the majority of the PPE, all the PPE we have in place. But there are certain heightened pieces of our plan, like the air purifiers. The county doesn't require us to do that. We can check the box, but we said we want to. So they're on order and we will get them. I don't know if there's any others that you guys want to point out in terms of some of those things that we're just watching. We want to make sure that we're exactly perfectly ready before we open. The other thing, I think, when we get into the concurrent instruction, and I think maybe Dr. Woodward can talk to this one, or Mr. Sheikho Salami, is that with concurrent instruction, there are additional technologies that we need to procure. With additional technologies that we need to procure, there may be additional training that we need to implement. So maybe not all of that is going to happen when we open our once a day, come in and meet with your teacher. So that may take a little bit more time to implement, and certainly before we get to the secondary level.
Sure, yeah. We've been meeting a lot with teaching and learning this week and over the time, and really discussing the concurrent learning and how technology would need to get integrated. And so we have some lower tech options and we have some higher tech options. And we also have some options that we can leverage our plans around the bond program that was going to advance our classroom technology into the 21st century. So both those options require procurement of devices and equipment. And then along with that goes, the imaging and getting the devices ready, and then the training and PD that would go with it. And you have to layer that in a time of challenges in procurement. The 3,000 Chromebooks that we ordered back in August have yet to be delivered to us. So there are challenges in procurement, but we feel that the concurrent model requires these devices, and that we should start preparing for them now so that when we go in that model, we're ready. But they do there is a lead time of both procurement, PD, and getting the teachers acclimated to that.
But none of those are required necessarily to implement the plan that we're approving tonight. But they are things that we want to continue building on. The last one is, it's listed as athletics and large group gatherings. That those positions have not yet been modified within the county. Same thing with we had our band groups have been out doing their marching drill, and they've been absolutely amazing. The teachers as well as the families and the students have been absolutely amazing at following the guidelines and doing what they can do and asking, can I try this? Can I try that? And we've been trying to help with that. And both Ed and I were pushing at the health department because we knew parents had a plan and the band directors had a plan to cover the bells and to put masks on with slits so that they are not getting a lot of the dispersal out amongst them and keeping apart. And if you look at their pictures they're posting out on social media, you can see even within their drill, they're keeping that 6-foot distance from one another. And so everybody's been working really hard to hold to the letter of the law because safety is important. But we finally were able to get the state to say, it's okay. It's okay to go back. And so I know our band directors and I think our band families are pretty excited about the opportunity to do that, as am I. The next one that I continue to really try to push on is athletics. Right now we have CIF is saying that athletics is likely that leagues, if they keep their position, will start on December 7th. So we have to be prepared to support those programs when they come back onto campus to practice to be prepared to compete. That might occur before we're bringing kids back on campus for classes. So that's going to be pretty complicated, but I got to tell you, these kids and the coaches they really have been responsible on our campuses and keeping their cohorts down and following the rules. And so we asked them to hold the line, they held the line. So when the line gets released, we need to step up and make sure we're providing that opportunity for them to engage in a way that's both approved by the county and by CIF, assuming that those guidelines continue as the way that they are. But I'm just calling those influencing factors because it may shift us in different directions related to different issues, but I wanted to make sure that we talked about them publicly. So with that, one of the other influencing factors about our start date is our calendar. And I know Dr. Woodward's been over there wanting to talk about the calendar, and I know that Jamie's been wanting to talk about it too. So I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Woodward so she can address the issue of how the calendar at this point of the year impacts our potential plan.
Thank you, Dr. Haglund. I've been looking forward to this moment throughout the evening. So it's really important for us to understand the workload and the instructional implications of the options that we bring to you this evening. So in the next several weeks, teachers will be involved teaching students the most essential content that they need to conclude the first trimester. And they will be finishing assessments and will be completing report cards. So as we look at the calendar, we know that all of that is going to happen before we have teacher-parent conferences. And those conferences, as you can see on the calendar, will be happening during the third week of November. And so to interrupt this flow right now, I would not advise that from an instructional perspective. As well, we do need to provide our teachers with some additional professional development, and then they would need some time to be able to get their classroom somewhat ready to be able to bring students back in small groups. So given that, the start date that I would recommend would be November 30th for the small groups. For bringing students back
on campus.
Continuing in remote instruction until this time, because I know that our teachers are looking at how they will be assessing their students, and they need to be able to continue that with them up until parent-teacher conferences. And parent-teacher conferences are remote this year.
So just to clarify then, so if we went with option 2, the 30th would be the first day that we'd have one of those 2-hour, 1.5-hour in-person sessions.
Correct. It's correct. And that would be the first day for them to have their 1.5-hour session. It would also provide us with the opportunities for our teachers possibly to interact with the families during conferences, and they may be able to gain more information about who's comfortable coming back and who's not at that time.
And if you notice on the calendar, Mark, the week before the break was already scheduled to be minimum days.
Yeah. Is there concern that there will be these family gatherings for Thanksgiving and people would come back that next week in a highly contagious state maybe?
Well, I'm gonna go back to what my pitch was, my soapbox was. I mean, we really need people to practice safety if they want their students to be able to come back. And we will have what we do have right now. The sites are doing the screening. They're doing the temperature scans. You experienced that today. And so I drove over there in my hot car to Vintage Hills, and my temperature was above normal. And so they made me stand back, and they let the other two go to the classrooms until my temperature came down below normal. So they're paying attention to that, and they really do have processes that hold it down. So yes, it's likely that they can. And if a parent chooses to go to an area that is, they were in an area that had a greater degree of spread when they come back, do the remote learning. Don't send your student back to school until you've gotten over that.
Yeah, so that was my question. So, my kid is in my student is in a second grade class, and but I'm not really comfortable sending my student back because of the holidays. Could I wait, till January, whatever the day is after winter break, January 5th or whatever, to have my kid, to have my student go back to, start the hybrid model or the AM/PM model?
Yes, you could wait.
Okay.
Some students won't come back at all.
Right. Exactly. Okay. Is that really enough time though for the teachers to plan and for the principals to get with everybody to do logistics? And I would imagine the first day it's going to be a lot of orientation for the students, right? Because it's all going to be new, how they're going to move around and what they can and can't do. And I mean, that's probably more than one day. That's probably a couple days of training.
5 weeks.
Yeah, but how long, how long does it really take for a site to get organized with their logistics? Because if, they have minimum days, the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, then people are off for the long weekend, and then they're back on the 30th to start, because conferences are what, the week of the 17th or the week of the 17th or 16th? I don't know. Is that enough time?
What are you suggesting? After the Christmas?
Well, I don't know. I don't know that I don't run a school site, so I don't really know how much time it would take. I think that's the question for, our principals to tell us, how much time that would take.
Dave, you're going to meet with the TK to 2 teachers, correct?
Correct.
So
we will do a Zoom meeting with them. We will also do something with the families. I think the way I would respond to that, Jamie, is I honestly believe that Dr. Woodward would not have brought forward a recommendation that she did not believe that her team of principals could implement. And so
okay.
I'm comfortable with that. The other thing is that they do have the option to stay out if they want to stay out, as do teachers. We want to honor the needs for remote learning if that's what they need. But again, if we don't identify what a start date, then the processes are never going to click in, and they need to do that.
I get that.
And I've talked to parents, Jamie, and they want to see light at the end of the tunnel.
Exactly.
They want a date so they can put it on the calendar and say, we're going back here.
Right. And remember, I said that last meeting, we all need an aspirational date, so now we're getting closer. It's not just aspirational. We're starting to get it firmed up, which I think everybody wants to know, right? Teachers and everyone. But yeah, I just want to make sure they have enough time to get ready. And, we've had a lot of comments from staff, wondering, questioning whether or not we are concerned with, the staff's safety. And I just really want to say that just because of this pandemic, is the first time that we're considering our staff safety. I mean, I probably speak for the entire board, but it's every single day that we care about the safety of our staff and our students. Heck, I mean, they're doing, traffic in the morning, something could happen. We have teachers that are, standing on their rolly chairs and, they could get hurt with that. I mean, there isn't a day that goes by that we're not concerned about our student and our staff safety. It's not just because of the pandemic. It's all the time. It's never stopped. So, I just hope that all of our staff understand that we are absolutely concerned about their safety.
What I believe the cabinet would do, Jamie, though, as Dr. Haglund has said, just because we put a date, if we get close to the date and it's not feasible, then that date isn't the date.
Right.
And I think, whatever date we pick here, I think at least we have time now to make sure that those MERV 13s are in every classroom because they're coming, that the air purifiers, I guess they call them, are in where they're supposed to be. We also have a chance to maybe possibly get in the yellow tier because we're heading towards that in Alameda County.
Yeah, we are.
Plus, a chance to look at the country. And if the country all of a sudden goes really crazy with infections, then maybe we shouldn't be doing this.
Right.
So I think it gives we need to have time to look at all that, but yet I think we need a date, as Dr. Haglund said,
right.
Let's start planning for it. So if we can't, then when we can, we will. I mean,
right. I'm fine with it. I think I'm fine with the date, but I just want to make sure though, that if for some reason the principals feel like, whoa, we just can't make it, that they have the ability to shift if they need to. And then the other question I had too is like, what if one site is ready and the other one isn't? Do all the sites have to start on the same day, or can they start when they're ready?
So I'm gonna jump on that one if I can, because I think there is one particular campus that we want to handle a little bit differently, and that's the Leidixon campus. And the reason for that is because the construction is due to be completed and move-ins ready during the Christmas break. And what I don't think is fair to teachers or to families is to, you bring them back and then you tell them you all got to move your classrooms. And so I think that one is one that we will hold off until after the construction is completed and the classrooms are open.
Well, yeah, and it's a lot of work to move into your classroom and set up your classroom. So,
especially only to move to a different classroom, a couple of weeks later. So we want to be sensitive to that. We did hear from some staff, and we agreed, and we're on track to have those buildings completed and ready for move-in during the break.
I think this timeline is more than generous. I mean, as evidenced, I don't recommend that we do it again, but the amount of time we gave staff to put the small group cohort together, and now we're going to give people 6 weeks to plan this out. So I think that it is generous amount of time, and it's thoughtful consideration for the minimum days and the parent-teacher conferences. So I think that this is a doable timeline. It's not as quick as I would have hoped for, as evidenced by what I've said before, but I think that this is a thoughtful process, and I would be supportive of this timeline.
Dr. Haglund, we have 100% of the administrators back and 60 to 70% of classified back? Dr. Haglund?
Julio's going to give you the numbers.
Have we had any problems or outbreaks?
Mr. Dialaza could talk about the outbreaks, but we do have 100% of our staff, administrative staff back. We have 27% of our certificated staff back, and I believe it was 87% of our classified staff back. And to my knowledge,
how long have they been back?
So our Kids Club program has been since summer. our childcare program since September, and our cohort started this past Tuesday. We have a close to over 500 students in our schools currently, and again, that staff that's also reporting physically to work. And Mr. D'Alonzo could speak maybe to scares or whatever you may have had, but I don't believe we have a positive case yet.
Yes, President Maher. So since we've opened programs, as Mr. Hernandez mentioned, we've had situations where kids have been sick or staff have been sick. What we've done is we followed the procedures and the guidelines in the county public health document that we shared earlier tonight. And we've had to, I believe maybe twice, where we shut down a program like Kids Club, but just for a day. And so we followed the procedures, individuals got tested. And so we've not had a student with COVID positive results. And so we've not had to shut down any of our programs for more than a day. And I believe that just happened at 2 programs, if I remember correctly. So to answer your question about another outbreak, I would say no.
Okay. Well, Jamie and I have talked a lot. So Trustee Arkin, Larson, Miller.
You're sitting
would
in
just-
the comfort of your own home.
Yeah. We're a little
That's
brainy.
right. We're eating.
I would just, can he not hear me?
Yeah, turn on.
My mic is on.
Mr. Maher, Trustee Arkin would like to speak.
Okay. Just one comment. I would say that as we get closer to that date, the 30th, which, if it does look a little precarious, I think as we go forward that you'll all make the decision that if it's deemed not safe, it's not safe. But I think also that date, the 30th, gives us some time. We just started the small cohort groups this week, 2 days ago. That gives us a little time to see how that goes. And if anything goes a little, wiry with that, that is something to be taken into consideration. However, if everything goes well, I think then that's, strengthens the opening date of the 30th even more. So I think that's one of the positives about waiting till the 30th is actually giving us a chance to see how the small cohorts go. And so I just want to make that comment right now. So thank you.
One other aspect of the plan, as I mentioned earlier, we are trying to both support our staff in the interactive process and also being able to secure staff for both the cohorts as well as this plan. So if the decision of the board is to support a November 30th date, we will be asking staff to report on the 16th of November. That would give enough time to be able to process staff that may be requesting leave to ensure that it gives us enough time to prepare Trustee Yee with principals and make sure that the classrooms are set up, make sure that the program would be okay, but also importantly to be able to identify our staffing issue, as we will be able to identify staff that would be requesting to take leaves, and therefore we would know which staff we would need to recruit for. So the ask would be that if the board gives direction on the 30th, that on the 16th of November, that TK2 and SDC preschool to fifth grade will be asked to report physically to work on the 16th.
What does that mean, Julio? Report physically?
So they will be required to report to work to their sites, Trustee Maher. And again, that would allow for two big things. One is to allow for that planning that Trustee Yee was concerned about, to ensure that the staff is there to prepare to set up the classrooms, to prepare the program. The other is so that we are given enough time to process any staff that wishes to engage in the interactive process. We don't want to have staff report on the 30th, because what if on the 30th a staff decides to take leave on that day? and then we will be conflicted not having enough staff to support the cohorts as well as this program. So that my ask would be, if that is the decision of the board, that students report on the 30th, that we allow staff to report physically on the 16th, so that we are able to manage those two circumstances.
Okay, well, they will be teaching though in the morning, correct? Remote.
On the 30th.
Trustee Maher, the students will not be arriving until the 30th, but
No.
we're going to be asking staff to report on the 16th so they can prepare for the program. The students will not be there. But
No.
again, it would allow us
The
to.
students will be remote. I think
Yes.
They're remote.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
that's true. So they would interact with their students remotely from their classroom.
Yes, so how much time they would have, I don't know.
What?
Well, if they're teaching remotely and although they're in the classroom, then they'll have a limited amount of time to set up their classroom.
So the week of the 16th is also parent-teacher conferences. So the remote instruction would be in the morning, and then they would be doing their conferences in the afternoon. And so that would be occurring from the campus, although the conferences are remote, not in person.
Right. They're not really gonna have much time to set anything up. I mean, quite frankly, they're teaching in the morning, then meeting with parents in the afternoon. And these conferences, I would assume, will be very thorough, because parents want to know, how is it going for my child since he's been on remote? And they haven't had a chance, well, some have, but not all have talked to the teachers. So I'm not sure bringing them back. I know they have to get ready, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure what we get by bringing them back if they have to do all what Dr. Woodward just said they have to do. But I know they have to get ready. I understand that, but maybe there's something they could give you that they're going to come back on the 30th or they're not, and they're,
I think it's fine if you want the teachers to report on the 16th, but to get ready for students to come by the 30th, and I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, they have to do conferences in the morning. They have, half day or conference in the afternoon, students in the morning. And then you've got a 3-day work week the next week. And then you come back after a long weekend to start accepting students on the 30th. That just feels really, really tight to me. I don't know. I think you guys are being really, I know Joan feels like 6 weeks is a long time. But they haven't all been on campus, right? There's the whole aspect of actually getting your classrooms ready and doing whatever you need to do. I don't know. I just feel like it's really tight. But
what if they have to let you know by during the week of 16th and 17th whether they're coming back, and then those days 23rd, 24th, and 25th were days that they set up their classroom?
Steve, I would say that our recommendation, which you guys can support, is to bring students back on the 30th, staff back on the 16th. If they need to, we have 26% or 27% of the staff that are back now.
okay.
So they're already working on their classrooms.
I'm sure.
We need to have time for staff to work through the interactive process, and the only way to do that is to have a trigger date. The trigger date is the 16th. That's what we're recommending.
Okay. All right.
I also want to clarify, Trustee Yee, that the 3 days before Thanksgiving break are non-teacher days and non-student days. So they would not be working during
They
that.
would not be working. Okay.
Oh, so the 23rd, 24th, and 25th are
They're non-student, non-teacher days,
Yes.
and so we want them to rest. So take break, go,
okay.
go on, hike the ridge. I'll go with you, but don't come to work. We want you to take a break.
Okay.
So come to work on the 16th through the 20th, and those are minimum days. Do your conferences, and hopefully you'll have some time in your classroom to set up for those small groups. Remember, that's all they'll be doing in their room after Thanksgiving is those small groups in the afternoon, and then teaching remotely, which they're already planning for.
Right. I don't have a problem with the teachers having to, the trigger date being the 16th, but I still think, you know how our teachers are. We give them a few days in the, the beginning of the school year to get their classrooms ready, but a lot of them start way earlier because they're just, they're all just extra. They have so much to
They
do.
are. That's what-
Yeah, and so I just feel like this is the same thing, right? So they're going to have to get their classrooms ready, plan for concurrent teaching. They also need to figure out the logistics at their school site of how they're just going to operate as a staff.
So Trustee, we're not recommending that we start concurrent teaching right now. We're recommending the small groups in the afternoon and remote learning in the morning.
Right.
There's one other clarification that I need to make because I didn't do it when I should have, and that's that. Please note that this plan that we're proposing is for TK through 2 plus the SDC. If and when we're ready to bring back third grade or middle school or high school, we will bring the plan back. You will see the new plan and we will resubmit it with the county. So this is only, call it the first stage of our reentry plan. So
And you're going to have a meeting with them this coming week anyway, correct?
we are going to invite all of the TK2 and special day class teachers to a meeting to talk logistics and answer specific questions. Yes, and we will poll. Our intention is to poll the families in those grade levels and in those classrooms, just to get a sense about what they're feeling as well.
Okay, and then one last thing. I know we're not voting on this, but just for planning, because I'm just trying to. I mean, there's so much anxiety around these dates, and so we've got a plan for TK through 2, and but I brought up the whole 6th and 9th grade thing, and then the 3rd through 5th. We don't have any idea. I mean, well, what about if 6 and 9 they could do some of the? Is there a way to expand clubs or something so the kids could start to get some contact or some sort of activity?
So Trustee, we are not authorized to open middle or high schools. Having said that, we can expand the cohorts just like we've been doing with conditioning for athletics and for the music program. So yes, there are opportunities there for us to follow the small cohort guidance at those grade levels.
So let's say, high school club wanted to maybe, start meeting and be in a small cohort together. Could they do that?
We're not directing the principals to do that, but if a teacher, the club advisor wanted to bring in kids, I certainly would be supportive of that concept as long as it's going to be a stable cohort that meets for 3 weeks before they roll in other students into it. In other words, it's got to be a stable cohort if we're following the cohort guidance.
I had a question about that. You mentioned earlier, and I've heard from a lot of teachers who want to come back. So you mentioned earlier that if, I'm not talking about after school clubs or cohorts, I'm talking about classroom instruction. If we had teachers who wanted to come back and teach a regular classroom and, they would have as many students as wanted to be in person and they are willing to do the concurrent and all that, would that be allowed?
In what grade, Joan?
Well, for now, it would be TK through 2 because that's all we're authorized to do.
Okay.
We're open to having that discussion with our teachers. I think starting gradually makes some sense. I'm a little concerned about one school having a full instructional day while the other schools maybe don't, just because that teacher is able to go in. So I think that there might be some norming that we would need to do with that. I do know, and I have heard from many teachers who feel strongly that they do want to come back. I don't think any of our teachers are thrilled that they are teaching via remote. This is I think they'd all love to come back when it's safe to do so. But as we continue to move into the orange and then hopefully into the yellow, I think that we can become more flexible in terms of finding creative ways to support our students with in-person instruction.
And my other concern, kind of related to what I said earlier, is that I learned yesterday on the tour, thank you teachers and principals for allowing us to come on campus and take a tour. It was really awesome. Again, I echo Janelle's words. It was like the best day ever for a board trustee. But I heard some concerns about our EL students, and I've received emails from teachers that some of I realize some of this is a staffing thing, but I really want to make sure that our EL students who are not doing very well, if anything at all, on remote are really, I know our parent liaisons, I'm sure, called and everything, but we really want to make sure that we get those kids into instruction and have them make some progress.
Top priority, you're saying, Jim?
Yeah, I really feel like they're being left out of some of the, I know we just started, I get all of those things. I'm just raising that. I really want us to keep that in front of us and work on getting those kids into services.
So, Trustee Larson, we do have a job description out there, particularly for bilingual. So we are actively recruiting our bilingual staff. We did also hear that concern that you heard yesterday. So we are putting extra efforts, not only in that group, but also in our homeless McKinney-Vento group as well. We heard some concerns that we are aware of now and directly dealing with.
Okay.
Thank you.
Trustee Miller, any questions?
Nope, I think we've exhausted all the questions.
Okay. Trustee Arkin?
No, nothing for now.
Okay, then Dave, do you need to move on, or can we go to public comment? Or
No, yeah, I think we need to go to public comment.
okay, Patrick, I'd like to go to public comment. Do we have some?
Yes, we do. Patrick's going to move over to the podium because his table didn't have a microphone. So he has to give him a second to transfer his workstation.
Okay. Okay, Patrick, how many do we have?
We have about 12, I believe.
Okay.
12 that submitted. Not everyone is in the virtual room.
Okay, we're ready to go. That could be 24 minutes. Who's keeping time?
We're overtime, right? Wasn't this meeting?
I believe Lanita is keeping time.
Yes.
Okay, well, let's go.
Michelle, are you there? Michelle Verkylen?
Michelle?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Gotcha.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, well, yeah, I was talking, but you couldn't hear me. So yes, I'm on now.
You are.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, President Maher, members of the board, Dr. Haglund, members of the cabinet, and our community. I am Michelle Verkylen, president of the Association of Pleasanton Teachers. Pleasanton students and staff deserve safe and healthy schools, and I am concerned. I am concerned about how decisions to reopen are being made. I am concerned I only have 2 minutes to speak tonight. I looked through this draft plan that was posted today, and I'm glad to see many things in there. Plans for PPE, plans for testing, plans for when cases of COVID arise. Many of you may be asking right now, why are you glad to see this? Haven't the teachers seen this plan? No. This is the first time any of us are seeing this plan. And yes, that makes me concerned because I know that a majority of this community would think that teachers were involved in this plan. But no, we were not. No one asked us about what we thought might be issues that will arise when we return in person. No one asked us about how much time we truly need. This is all being discussed without us. Let me be clear. If November 30th is the date, no TK through second grade teacher and any of our SDC teachers will be on taking a break. They will be setting up their classrooms. There is no time for them to do that now. They are teaching, they are planning, they are uploading things for their children to learn. No one asked us for input on how a hybrid plan could be successful after we've now done remote teaching for 3 months and have a much more solid understanding of all that is needed for effective instruction in a remote environment. The first any of us heard about concurrent instruction was 2 days ago with a few-minute overview, much as you have received today. The poll you saw earlier was taken after that few-minute overview. This is the first we have seen of the recommended option 2. Yet there were many of us involved in talks and plans this summer, but most everything has changed since then. How students were placed in classrooms, what we know about delivering instruction remotely, how different families feel about returning and how that affects placement in classrooms currently, health and safety guidelines. It's all changed. But yet, no, we were not asked. The classroom professionals and instructional experts were not asked for questions, for concerns, to weigh in for this plan or presentation you see today. But we move merrily along tonight. I am concerned when I see training listed that all employees supposedly had, which we did not. I am concerned when it says we have negotiated in-person returns to campus. We have not. No plan has been presented to our bargaining team to negotiate. Mr. Hernandez did verbally state this earlier. I am concerned when I see things in this plan that state as soon as they are available, when they are developed, when we have them. I am concerned when we are going to rush into an opening, both from a scientific pandemic perspective and from an effective educational standpoint. Our teachers, nurses, counselors, therapists, clinicians, behaviorists, social workers, specialists, and librarians, we are all concerned about the well-being of our students and our staff, their physical health, their mental health, and their education. We know our community trusts us to take care of their children, mind, and body. We do not take that trust lightly, and we want you to know that we have not been included in these plans to be able to tell you that we can be entrusted with all this. Time is needed to ensure the health, safety, and education of all. If we do not take the appropriate time to ensure that the educators that will be on the front lines with your child can keep them safe and teach them, we will all be the worse for it. Hopefully not in catastrophic, deadly ways. Do not rush into decisions in which key stakeholders, the educational professionals, have not been involved. Pleasanton students and staff deserve safe and healthy schools. Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Asan Hoke, then Joffrey Lane and Maria White.
Thank you very much for letting me speak. My question, I think, was answered during the course of the debate, which was if we choose at some point we chose to return to a hybrid model, but what happens if we choose to not come back when school reopens because we're not comfortable? I think you have answered that question by saying that, yes, we do have that option of not sending our children back to school and continue the remote learning. So appreciate that. Thank you very much. I use my time.
Okay, thank you. Next we have Joffrey Lane, followed by Maria White, and then Sam Weaver. All right, thank you for letting us know. We'll move along to Maria White, then Sam Weaver, and then Patty Hannafy.
Good evening. Instead of focusing on the obvious, which would be to explain how dangerous it is to go back to classrooms during a worldwide pandemic, I'm going to instead keep my comment tonight on what it would feel like from an educator's perspective, trying to teach in this proposed concurrent model. Right now, this meeting is being shared live while people are in person attempting to model this concurrent enrollment. However, there are multiple people who are running this meeting, helping each other out with technology, moving the presentation along, helping participants into and out of Zoom, and presenting a proposal, which I am guessing took a long time to put together prior to the start of this meeting. There also seems to be some wonderful technology that is scanning between the speakers automatically so that everyone can be seen and heard. This is similar to what teachers are going to have to do daily in their plan to open up schools if we go back to the concurrent, or if we go towards the concurrent model. The huge difference, though, is that teachers will need to do all of this on their own, not with any extra help from anybody else. Remember, we don't have people to help run our remote classes right now, and we certainly are not going to have any extra help during a concurrent enrollment process. This plan is going to take the amount of educational time that students normally get and cut it in half. No more student interaction in the afternoon in private Zoom sessions when students ask for private tutoring. No more student feedback, no more grading, because instead that time is going to now go towards helping students who are showing up in person. Yes, teachers want to see their students. Teachers want to be back in person. But right now, that is not a feasible option considering the plans that have been laid out in front of us. Teachers are already working countless hours each day beyond their work hours. I personally worked from 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. last night, this morning, just making one interactive lesson. Please remember that the concurrent model is not going to work based on what we've said without something giving. Please don't let that give be our students' education. I urge you guys to vote no for this item tonight because Pleasanton students deserve the best and concurrent enrollment is not the best. Thank you very much.
All right. Next, we have Sam Weaver, Patty Hanafi, and then Leah Perez.
Good evening, Board of Trustees and Cabinet. My name is Sam Weaver, and I'm a parent and teacher in Pleasanton Unified School District. In addition, my wife is a teacher in Pleasanton Unified. If the board decides to reopen schools, here is what you are saying to our community. You are downplaying concerns about the physical health and safety of our students and staff. How do we manage when students or teachers are absent due to symptoms? Who will pick up the slack when someone is hospitalized due to COVID? What do we tell students when a peer or teacher dies? You are also telling us that you are willing to listen to the overly vocal minority while ignoring the advice and professionalism of our teaching community. Yes, you are the elected officials and should listen to feedback from the community, but at the end of the day, the vote rests squarely on you and your conscience. Why listen to a vocal few when you have professionals who are on the front lines of teaching and learning and know what is best for students? Furthermore, based on the informal polling done at both the teacher and community town halls this week, there is no clear majority of either group that is comfortable with the return to school. Why is this even being discussed? Finally, you do not understand the logistical nightmare of what a return to school will look like and have not asked teachers for input since the summer. How do you fit 15 kids in a classroom while being distanced by 6 feet? How do you expect students to work together in peer groups but keeping the 6 feet distance? At least with Zoom, students can utilize breakout rooms. What do you do about classrooms that lack windows that open? And what about just opening the door when the weather is cold and wet? Where is the equity in the proposed return for students and staff? How do we balance schedules, workloads, attendance, illnesses? How are teachers supposed to provide the quality instruction that you rest your laurels in a new environment without sufficient time or compensation for doing so? This is just five issues. I can list hundreds more. We hear you extol our teachers and the efforts that we put forth. Our teachers are amazing. They do wonderful work. We are already bending over backwards because that is what we do. Expecting us to continue to do so in an unsustainable situation is telling the community that you do not fully understand public education and need to listen to the educational professionals that make Pleasanton Unified the district that it is. Thank you.
All right, next we have Patty Hanafi, followed by Leah Perez, and then Amanda Brown.
Patrick, can you hear me?
We gotcha.
Okay, as an elementary science specialist at Donlin Elementary, I see all first through fifth graders. As the school year has progressed, I've been more and more impressed with our students as they get into the groove of distance learning. All grade levels log into meetings and participate fully. Science supplies have gone home so the kids can continue to have hands-on learning. We have set schedules that the kids are used to. We're about to go into conference time and then that short time between Thanksgiving and winter break. Families travel, kids miss school, cold and flu seasons, kids miss school. We agree that schools should reopen when the benefits outweigh the risks. And I'm not just talking about health risks, but the risks of disrupting learning by changing everything the teachers have worked so hard to build, a thriving distance learning community. It takes at least a week to teach and reteach a new normal and a new normal in community building. If we try to bring kids back between Thanksgiving and Christmas, I fear that any community building done during that short 3-week period of time is going to be lost over the long winter break. Why not wait until after break? Let's do this right. Thank you.
All right, next we have Leah Perez, followed by Amanda Brown, and then let's see, Lynn Gatehouse let us know that she would not be with us, and so Amanda Brown will be followed by Jean Sun if she's with us.
Good evening, President Maher, Board of Trustees, Dr. Haglund, Executive Cabinet, and the Pleasanton community. First, I would like to thank you all for your service and dedication to providing exceptional educational services to the children in our community. My name is Leah Perez, and I'm a teacher at Valley View Elementary School, and my son also attends Valley View. I would like to express my deep concern about students returning to the classroom in any form, as well as the absence of any discussion surrounding the current surge of COVID-19. As much as our district and the community wants us to return to some semblance of normalcy, I'm afraid that a vote for us to return to our classrooms will be a decision to put the health of students, teachers, and families in our community at risk. For months, medical experts have been warning of a potential surge of COVID-19 in the fall. 2 days ago, our country's top medical expert, Dr. Fauci, announced that our country is currently in that surge and is headed to a third peak. In the United States, new cases per day are on the rise in 44 states. 17 states are seeing surges unlike anything experienced earlier in this pandemic. Not only is the U.S. experiencing a surge, but globally, the virus is surging. Coronavirus cases around the world have climbed to an all-time high of more than 330,000 per day. This should be alarming to all of us, as should the idea of having students return to classes during the flu season when we have been warned of the surge we are currently seeing. Although case counts have recently dipped in counties like Alameda County, these experts are saying that this is an imperfect measure of the pandemic's severity. While our public health officials believe that they have good control of the infection dynamic, Dr. Fauci is saying that this is not the case. Therefore, Alameda County's current orange tier status does not mean that we will definitively continue to see a reduction in COVID cases. In fact, the increased transmission in communities across the country would suggest that our county is very much susceptible to a resurgence. I think we would be careless to ignore the scientific evidence that our best doctors and universities are putting forth. I implore you to allow students to continue to learn remotely and wait to see what the progression of this new surge is in Alameda County and in our state. The health of our students, staff, and families depend upon your responsible actions to protect us all. Thank you very much.
Next, we have Amanda Brown.
Hi there, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Hi. As a mom of 3 young elementary school students, I understand the struggle of parents right now, and I am so thankful for all of our teachers and their dedication and unending patience. That being said, 89% of Pleasanton teachers polled this week did not say they are ready to return to in-person teaching. 89%. That's 89% of our teachers who might be requesting leave in the next few weeks. Teachers must protect the health of themselves and their families, as we must do too. But when we force schools to reopen and create an exodus of our primary teachers who request leave, this leaves us with short-term substitutes instead. How is this a good solution? We are giving parents the choice between remote learning with our primary teacher or in-person learning with a substitute. We shouldn't push out our primary teachers to gain an hour and a half of in-person instruction a week with a substitute. On a call last night, 78% of parents are also not ready to return to the classroom. So if a vast majority of parents and a vast majority of teachers are not ready to return, why must we rush to reopen at the beginning of cold and flu season and during a time in which the United States is seeing record high COVID numbers? Finally, the CDC said this week that the current spike in record high COVID cases nationwide is primarily due to small household gatherings. We can safely assume that these types of small household gatherings would only increase over Thanksgiving and Christmas. I urge the school board to wait until the new year to start this reopening, to protect our teachers and students, and to show that they are listening to the community and Pleasanton's teachers. Thank you.
All right, and next is Jean Sun. Jean, are you with us? All right, thanks for confirming. Then we will keep rolling to Amber Nelson, then Michael Hubbard, followed by Cheryl Atkins. So Amber, if you're with us, go ahead.
Cheryl?
Sorry, that's Amber. Amber Nelson, are you still with us?
Amber?
Okay. Got it. So we'll move to Michael Hubbard. All right. Well, then we'll keep rolling. Cheryl Atkins.
Cheryl?
Hello?
There we go.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for giving me a few minutes. I'm uncomfortable talking, but I really felt the need that I had to speak up about a couple of things. Michelle said mostly already that the teachers have not had a chance to have this conversation on the things that are being proposed. So I and a whole bunch of other teachers spent a lot of time on task force this summer. And now that we've been doing this, we have a lot more information. We never discussed concurrent teaching. We are working so hard. I start my Zooms at 8:15 in the morning, and I am going all day until 1:05 doing whole class Zooms and small reading group Zooms. Kids are getting 3 and 4 small group Zooms a week. And if we go to this afternoon time, there's no more hours in the day to give. So if we go to a small group Zooms or small groups at school from 1:30 to 3, well, then the morning time has to give. Because the time that I'm using right now from 1:30 to 3 with all the planning and preparing, I'm gonna need time during the day to do that. So one thing has to give for something else. We can't do it all. So what I want to hear us discussing is, and I'm ready to come back to school, but how can we do this feasibly, safely, and how can we take things off of our plate, not add to what we're already doing? So we need more discussion. I would have liked to have been able to have that discussion with the K2 and Dr. Haglin before coming to the board tonight so that we could have talked and have solutions together. So thank you for your time.
All right, and our final 3 comments come from Gigi Cully, followed by Lydia Zazaron, and our final comment just comes from Dean. Okay, well, we will go with Lydia. Lydia, if you're there, go ahead.
We are new residents to Pleasanton, and I have a first grader currently. I have some questions and comments around the timelines that were shared today. So one was about the timelines to actually survey families on what it is that they're looking for, whether it's to stay remote at home or distance learning, or if they're comfortable going back. I think there was allusion to teacher conferences, but it would be great to have a specific timeline. And after those surveys, if out of that, students are then needing to be shifted or moved around to a different teacher or a different school, what is the plan to get them comfortable and immersed with their new teacher or their new environment? Will there be campus tours or one-on-one with teachers in the event that they are switched around? I'm also a bit confused on the timelines overall of when this is going to happen. I think I heard November 2nd would be the earliest, but the recommendation is November 30th. So a couple of things that I would consider in really trying to get a solid date out for families is childcare. Childcare is not easy right now. And so as parents make decisions of what they can and can't do, it's really important that we have a date to understand that. I am an essential worker, and that is a big piece for me. Also mental preparation for our children. This is a big deal for them to think about going back to school. And so I really feel like, keeping the cohorts in place and understanding what is and isn't working and giving the kids and teachers more time through the rest of this year seems to be beneficial. Not only that, this holiday season is going to be tough enough. I have questions in my head, like, does Santa Claus come out during coronavirus? And how do I explain to my kids that they might not see grandpa or grandma for Christmas or Thanksgiving this year? And then to have to prepare them on top of that about going back to school. So really, I think that giving us more time so that we can go through all the prerequisites of your plan and prepare our children and wait until after the full holiday season would be great. I also really appreciate the accessibilities of meetings like this via Zoom, because as an essential worker, I haven't been able to be involved in the past. And I would love for these forums to stay open and virtual in the future, regardless of going back to school. Thank you guys so much.
All right. And I just want to confirm that. Oh, okay. Dean, go ahead.
Dean, you're on.
Okay. I did receive correspondence from Amber Nelson, who was listed before. Is she in the waiting room?
Hi there, can you hear me?
We can.
Sorry about before, my mic would not unmute, so maybe other people are having that issue as well. Hello to the board and to the cabinet and everyone who's listening. Honestly, most of my comments have already been said, but I wanted to reiterate a couple of them. I really am concerned about the fact that it's clear that a significant portion of our populations are not ready to come back. If you looked at the comments from yesterday's town hall, most parents, the highest rated comment was basically asking that we start looking at this process in January, and I actually really think that's a good idea. It'll give us more time to plan thoroughly. It'll give us more time to figure out how to transition effectively. So yeah. The other thing I really wanted to emphasize is Wednesday was the first time that teachers heard about the concurrent learning and option 2, and we have a lot of concerns about it. I know for me, my first graders, they're exhausted by 1 o'clock. Like, I literally had a little girl fall asleep and almost fall out of her chair. Luckily, she had an adult with her. So I'm really concerned about how effective that time's going to be, given how exhausting remote learning is for these little ones. I also don't know, I'm just like the teachers hadn't heard about it. Parents haven't really been given a chance to give feedback. And just the informal feedback I've gotten is that parents are a little concerned about making that commute to school and back again when they have a work day to attend to. Sorry, I'm trying to hit all the stuff that I thought was most important. I think that's pretty much it. I think the timing of this is questionable. I think we're not being responsive to the majority of our population if we don't wait on this. And I think, you know, really being committed to safety has to be the #1 goal. That's it. Thanks so much, guys.
All right. I just want to check on Dean if he is still having technical difficulties. Okay, I just wanted to call on 2 more names, and you know, we're trying to be as open with these comments as possible, but I think we'll close the public comment process. I just wanted to check if Gigi Cully or Laura Hall was on. All right. Okay. Then I think that we will President Maher, if you would like to move on, then we can.
Okay, thank you. Is there any more comments or concerns from the board? Jamie, any more? Mark?
I don't know if I have a great direction to provide here, but it is very clear to me based on the emails I've received, all except one, were basically reflective of the same messages we've just been hearing from the teachers. So I guess based on that, I just feel that the teachers do not feel comfortable coming back and the plan that we had talked about, even for a 1.5 hour session once a week for each kid. Perhaps having the session this week with the TK2 teachers will give a chance to talk it through, and maybe that they can have more. But I would have to say that my direction would be, given what I'm hearing from the teachers, is that we pause until we can get enough buy-in. I will also say, for the teacher's perspective, you know, my experience is the more time you give people to do stuff, the more time it takes them to do stuff. And so sometimes, you know, putting a line in the sand, like we've talked about, having an aspiration is actually important to getting work done, to getting the necessary work done. So I'm not really buying into we need more and more time to get our classrooms together or whatever. I mean, it's 6 weeks. I know, I've been to the virtual open house. I know how hard that this preparing of these lessons is. I've had many conversations with people about it. I really do. But I think these 1 day a week with 6 students in a classroom, it doesn't feel like it's that much work to me. So, but I'm not a teacher, and I will say that right now. So, but again, if we don't have the support and buy-in of this group of people to make this happen, then I think we need to take more time to get better buy-in. I guess that's my direction.
Trustee Larson?
So honestly, 10 years on this school board, this is probably and that includes laying off some of my good friends who were teachers in the Great Recession. This is probably the hardest decision. And, you know, I understand emotions run high, but to us, for some of the emails that we've gotten, to assume that we don't care about the health and safety of staff when we have described to you all of the steps that we're taking to ensure safety of our staff and our students is insulting. And I just really need to say that, because we have been this district, and we have said over and over again how wonderful and grateful we have been for the work that the teachers have been doing and the remote learning, which for the majority of students is going well. But raising the issues about it not going well for some students does not negate or say that other people are not doing a good job. We're not health experts. We are lay people elected to represent you, the public, the community. Our first priority is to our students. This is what an educational institution is. Of course, our staff are critically important, and their safety is critically important as well. But so then when we're evaluating decisions like this, and we are relying on the health department for their guidance, they've given us guidance. We're going beyond the guidance. We are doing more safety steps than is required. So, you know, the easiest thing for me to say is, sure, let's do the whole year remote. I mean, come on, why would we want to do that? That's the easiest thing to vote. I don't have to worry about teachers being upset at me. I don't have to worry about, you know, that's the easiest path to walk. And I'm emotional about this because I care, and they care. We all care. if we don't agree with each other on every little detail on this plan, this isn't my favorite plan. This is a compromise plan. An hour and a half in the afternoon, that's not enough for me. From my point of view, I've been pretty blunt about it. I'm not telling you anything I haven't said already. But this is a start. This is let's get people in a room to do the work and make adjustments, and they'll see. When you walk on the campus and you see the work that's being done and how excited the kids are to be back, and we're all dealing with so much fear of the unknown, but we're on call. School board members are on call with the county superintendent and the county health department, the head of the county health department. This week we talked about all of the things that are going on in Alameda County. We're already in the orange tier. We're on track to move into a lower tier, but if we don't, they're being even more conservative. We're not being allowed to open things up that are in the orange tier. They're still holding us to the red tier, which is a conservative approach, and we're being even more conservative than that. So the idea that we're not taking safety into consideration of our staff is insulting. We are. We have been going through these permutations and taking into consideration all of the issues that can come about. Other places in California have been doing in-school teaching, and they have been doing it safely. We have been teaching, we have been with students on our campus safely all summer long. Like I said, I didn't sleep last night. I sat here and I thought, what am I going to say? Am I going to just go, okay, teachers don't want to come back, they're afraid. So, okay, well, we won't come back. Or do we start a date and we say, firmly tell us? That's the only way we're going to know, is if we set that date to come back. Then teachers start going through the process and engaging in the leaves that they're allowed to take by virtue of the laws that were put in place as a result of the pandemic. I feel we have to start, or we'll always find a reason. There'll always be some other reason to not try to come back into what we consider to be a better teaching model than remote teaching. I believe Pleasanton students deserve the best too, and the best is our teachers in person. We can't have that 100% right now. But I just feel like we have to start somewhere. And so, I had a lot of questions about, again, to me, this is also an equity issue. Our most vulnerable students are not served well in this model. And I really, I pressed David on this and been pretty upfront here in the boardroom. And, however we vote tonight, just know that this is not a decision we're taking lightly by any stretch of the imagination. We have taken the steps. We've looked at the data. We've looked at the science. And I have to say one more thing, just because I'm on a roll. To insinuate in letters to us that we are responding to the national politics of the president, not a single, you just don't know this board very well. I just have to tell you. So that is not what we're responding to. We're responding to the health data that we see in the Bay Area and in Alameda County specifically, the health guidance from our county health department, our local experts, including teachers who worked on the plan over the summer. I appreciate the comments that some of this stuff is new and you haven't had an opportunity to provide all of the feedback that you should be able to provide. I can appreciate that. I'm not crazy about concurrent teaching yet either, to be honest. and Janelle and I have had that conversation. I just don't know that we're going to know how to get through this without starting. So that's where I am.
Okay. Trustee Arkin.
Thank you. Yeah, as Trustee Larson said, these are really tough decisions. This is a really tough one. But then again, that's what we are elected to do, and it falls on us to do it. So we're going to have to do it. Reiterating again, we absolutely care about the health and safety of our staff and our students. We wouldn't be sitting up here, literally or figuratively, if we did not believe that. We would not be in this position and put all the time and work and dedication and passion into this if we didn't care. So I would reiterate the same thing Trustee Larson said. And I would absolutely love for our kids to be back in school, and I think a lot of us feel that way. The health and safety of our students and teachers and classified staff, that does have to come first. We do have to consider the social and emotional mental health of our students as well. So that's what makes it really difficult. So as I'm listening, and we've gotten a lot of feedback, I think we all have with emails, and we've heard some tonight, we've heard some before, we've had the forum, a couple of things. So we are not considering concurrent enrollment, we are considering option 2, correct? Because I know some public speakers said that, and I just want to make sure we're clear. This is not concurrent enrollment, that's the recommendation. I would like to know, because we have heard that there wasn't much involvement of teachers on these decisions. I don't know what extent that has happened, hasn't happened. And I think Trustee Miller mentioned that we really do need to engage our employee groups. If that still needs to happen or happens to a greater extent or what have you, that does need to happen, because we need to get everybody on board and we need to get buy-in on this. So I would make that comment that we need to do that. So as I'm listening to everybody and have the calendar here in front of me, if we start on November 30th, there's a couple of things. It is only 3 weeks before the Christmas break. 3 weeks is 3 weeks, but to wait till January, if we were to do that after the break, give all of our staff plenty of time to have more engagement with them and to get ready. We aren't talking about a significant amount of time to wait. It's 3 weeks. And in that third week actually is part of the finals week. I know that's not, we're talking TK2, but so it is only 3 weeks. I was thinking it was a little more than that, but as I'm looking, it's not that much. Regarding the social and emotional health of the kids going back to school, 1 day a week for an hour and a half, as I'm thinking of that, that's not very much. Kids are not going to be able to run around and play with their classmates. They're not going to be able to be physically close to a teacher or anybody else. So the impact, although it is some engagement, and that's a good thing, what exactly is the real impact of that? And again, we're talking about 3 weeks. So those are things I would just like to bring up. And as it relates to working parents, which I have that exact concern that Trustee Larson brought up, it is an hour and a half in the afternoon that they're actually with in-person instruction. So for working parents, that doesn't really have a significant impact with that little bit. I agree, we do have to start somewhere. I just think it might be worth looking at waiting until January. Just, again, it's a 3 week time, 3 weeks of instruction we are delaying. And then the holidays hit. It is going into flu season. That will be peak flu season. So that's another concern. We've seen it all over the nation as other schools across the nation and colleges, kids came back, and even though there's distancing and mask wearing and everything, there have been explosive outbreaks. So That's something to just keep in mind as well. So this is a tough decision. I think I'd prefer probably starting in January with this. I don't know how the rest of the board feels. I'm not 100% opposed to starting earlier than that. I just think all the things I just said were considerations that maybe it does make more sense to start in January.
Okay.
So I'll leave it there, and I'll let the rest.
Maybe I can say a few words. I'm going to put my principal hat on here. That I'm concerned that 66% of our staff said no. I'm concerned that they feel they didn't have input. I know as a coach that if you have a game plan and your players don't have input, don't agree with totally with the game plan, then the plan somehow falls apart. I know that they get to have leave. I don't even want to look at what it might be if 50 of our teachers wanted to leave. If every school had 5 teachers that went on leave, that would just ruin our plan. But the other side of me says you must put a date because parents need to have that light at the tunnel. So I agree with Trustee Arkin. Maybe we go back right after the first of the year. I've been wavering on this. I've been thinking about this, but when I look at the data that was presented at the town hall and at the staff meetings, that 66% of the staff said we can't come back. Now, there could be a lot of reasons why they feel they can't come back. I just know that you have to have our staff on board and to implement all the work that people have put in so far. But we need to include them. We need to talk with them. And then we need to move. And I think we could put a date. After the first of the year, January such and such, we're back. And then you have time to go through all the processes that we need to do to get buy-in from everybody. So my view is I'm voting like Trustee Arkin for after the first of the year. Jamie?
Yeah, I pretty much am echoing what everybody else said, basically. And I think I already, brought this up in our discussion before. It just didn't seem like there was really enough time for people to get ready. But then when you factor in, where the teachers don't feel like it was discussed with them and they're not bought in, the plan isn't going to work if we don't have buy-in. So if we start in January, it'll give time for everybody to, weigh in, plan better, not be so rushed, and actually take the Thanksgiving week off and have a break, and have the winter break also would be a really good thing, I think, for our staff. It's not the best for the parents who really want their kids back. There's that other side we have to weigh too. There are families that really want to come back. And then there are some that really think remote learning is going great. I mean, it's really all over the map, right? And I don't know that there's one perfect answer for everybody who has, whatever their personal issue is or concern. But I do think that we need a little bit more time to get the buy-in, and I think it does make more sense to start in January, right after the break.
One extra comment is that I think if we do that, and I'm starting to lean that way as well. I want to say I really do appreciate the option 2 being an innovative way to do this. I think that, I like that it's nobody else doing this. It's something we came up with because it does take us a step towards it. But I think if we are going to push the date to the January 5th, then I don't think we necessarily should select option 2 now to do that. I think we take the time to get additional input. Maybe we'll come up with option 4 and 5 or something like that. But I just would say that, we don't lock ourselves into thinking that, okay, January 5th, we're going to come back with a 1-day a week kind of thing, because I don't know that that's going to be the right answer. So otherwise I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
Can I add one more comment, President Maher?
Sure.
I think, as all of us have said, some kids are doing great with remote. Some kids are failing miserably at it. I mean, all kids are different. So even within the same family, they can all be different. I just think for those kids that are having real struggles, I mean, we do have the small cohorts, and I would ask that maybe we expand that or just allow as many as we can for those that really are struggling, so that we have some option for those kids that really need the help. Yeah, I think that would be a good way to kind of fill in the gap until we're ready to proceed.
I can't help it. I have to say, so, okay, it's safe enough for us to have a classified person come on campus to work with these students, but it's not safe enough to have a certificated person come and work with these students. Honestly,
I don't think it's about safety.
Well, that's what we're being told it's about. So, to me, I mean, obviously I will support whatever our board decides to do. But and you're correct, Mark, in 2 weeks, we're going to be at the 26th. There's going to be a lot more things open. The county's already approved us to start bringing back secondary in I don't know what to call it, phases, so by January, it's possible that we could totally be opening school as it was before. So I agree, locking that in now, I mean, we could always change it again, but understand that. But I think it's important to have a firm date because people need to understand that we are moving towards opening school as we can do it safely, which we have shown that we can.
Yeah, I have one more thing to add to. Go ahead, Mark.
No, it was me, but go ahead.
Yeah, and the other thing that I think is important to give a little bit more time is, people need to figure out their childcare, especially if the kids are only going to be there 1.5 hours a week. The childcare thing is a huge issue for a lot of our families, and we really need to take that into consideration, and not just for our families, but also for our staff, because they also have childcare issues as well. So I just think there's a lot of logistics to work out. I really want our staff to have a break at Thanksgiving and the winter break, and they're not going to be able to do that if the students arrive on the 30th. So I just want us to take that into consideration. I'm actually hearing that we're all in agreement with starting in January, it sounds like.
So you have,
say something?
Steve, if I could jump in just for a
Sure.
second, I want to clarify the timeline. The timeline that was recommended by the county was to bring back elementary schools beginning October 13th. As districts are ready, we get to have that choice. And then to bring back secondary students over the course of the next 4 to 12 weeks. So 12 weeks from the 13th is January 13th. That's when high school students could come back. If we don't start rolling this process, you're looking towards the possibility of being in the yellow zone and attempting to bring everybody back at the same time, which may be your desire. I'm good with that. But we brought forward tonight a recommendation to start a slow roll to ensure that students had additional supports between now and the beginning of January. So there's a proposal recommendation on the table. I haven't heard a motion yet, so it could die, and then we can come back to you with a different recommendation if that's your desire.
Okay.
David, I totally appreciate what you're saying. I mean, that it is the slow roll into going, before we get the high school kids back makes a lot of sense. But I'm just really concerned about not having the staff buy-in, and it's just like one of the teacher speakers said, are we just listening to the vocal minority? Well, we could say the same thing about the teachers. Are they the vocal minority? I don't know. But yeah, are they, Steve? I don't know. Are they the vocal minority? I don't know.
Like parents and like the students, they're very important because we need to have them.
Right.
And I there's no easy answer.
there is no easy answer because we want our staff to buy in, but I'm also thinking about the mom who spoke last week with the 5 little kids. I mean, she needs people need their kids back at school. It's just.
I don't think one day a week is going to solve that.
It's really hard, but we need to get going, right? We need to get going. As David said, we need to get this rolling. We start out one day a week, but people know that it's going to add, that they're going to add more days. They're going to add more time in person. That's coming. We have to get there.
So David, can we make a motion to move it to January? Or do we have to?
So there is a recommendation from staff. And
yes.
You can support the recommendation or you can send us back to the drawing board.
But you're not good with us going with your recommendation except just tweaking the start date?
Yes.
Well, we're not actually, what we were talking about was we wouldn't actually go with option 2. We would do a start date of January, but then we would ask for a recommendation. Given the extra time, are there other ideas that might come to light? And it may end up being TK through 12. I don't know, but that would be, I think that's kind of more what we are talking about.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense too. Sorry, David.
I mean, I will say that I think we should do option 2, and I think we should do it November 30th is my thing. But I don't think we should do it unless, to everybody else's point, I don't think we should do it unless the team is behind it. And we just have it's not like it's a half and half thing right now. It's really a vocal majority among that constituency that is saying no. To your point, Joan, I mean, I think you made a great point. It's like, we can't just keep kicking the ball down the road and have some nebulous, if this happens or that happens. People have to shoot for something. I really do believe you have to shoot for something. And then you work to make it happen, not wait for some, imaginary bar to be reached or something like that. So, and we are conservative in this county. We are conservative in this district. I don't believe this is an issue of safety. I'm going to say that right now. I believe we can do this safely. With all the stuff that these guys have done and put together, I believe we can do this safely. This is an issue of logistics in my mind, and I do believe the teachers have some huge logistical hurdles to make this work. So to me, that has always been the bigger issue in this.
So David, how would we putting a date on there, such as January 4th or whatever? That's when we come back and start.
Well, you guys can choose to do what you like, but my recommendation would be to vote against the staff's recommendation and send us back to the drawing board.
I would just pose a just suggestion, not any motion or anything, but I believe we come back, the students, teachers, everybody comes back from winter break on the 4th, I believe.
Yes.
I'm looking at that right. Perhaps, and again, this is just something to consider, having TK to 5 come back on the 4th, and then 2 weeks later, 6 to 12 comes back. Because I think right now 6 to 12 is the January 13th, which is mid-January. So have TK5 beginning of January, and 2 weeks later have 6-12. That's just a thought, but I think too.
The problem with that is that the county isn't allowing us to do 3 through 5 right now. But I mean, we could just bank on the fact that maybe it's going to change by January.
Yeah, you can absolutely do 3 through. You can do all of elementary school right now.
Oh yeah, that's right. You can actually do up to 6. Actually, it's TK through 6.
Yeah, our goal was to start bringing students back, providing high touch points with kids in classrooms with teachers to get them to build those relationships. When they come back in January, the relationships are a little bit more secure, especially for the younger students. But we are meeting yellow criteria right now. We have for almost 2 weeks now, I think, Ed, correct? So when we can go into the yellow, we will likely be going into the yellow, which means the guidance will continue to be released, and we will still be in a position of having not stepped out into anything whatsoever. And so then the push is going to be, let's just do it, bring everybody back. And is that the position that we want to put ourselves into? And it may be. I mean, this is tough. I agree with Joan, and everybody has said it. This is really, really hard stuff. And we've, collectively have tried to bring forward what we believe is our best option, understanding, and I've said it probably too many times, that date is only a date on a piece of paper. If we're not ready, we won't trigger the opening. But if we don't set a trigger date, then all of these other processes, including the negotiating of impact and effect with the associations, they don't really happen because we can keep pushing it down the road. And so that's why we've brought those recommendations forward. And, when we opened the small group cohorts, we heard stories, not one, but stories of students, English learners in particular, who had not turned in anything because they had not been able to communicate with the teacher. That's anything since middle of August. And the parents and the children were crying because they're finally getting some help that they need. And so whether we do it in the small group cohorts or by bringing in groups of 6 or 8 students, however we choose to do it, that's simply not acceptable. We have to make sure that those students are getting the help that they need. And frankly, I'm really blessed. I feel blessed that we've got so many people, classified staff members, that have stepped up to take care of some of this work. But they're not certificated educators. They're filling gaps and helping kids do the technology in the room so that those kids can connect up with the teachers. We can and should do better than that.
I have a question about the buy-in, just breaking it down a little bit more. So we're hearing different things from teachers and even the speakers tonight, right? Some are saying, we should stay on remote learning. And then the others are saying they didn't get a chance to chime in on the plan and they need to do that. So I don't know. This is so complicated.
Talking about moving it from the 30th to the 4th. If you put a date, that's when we're going to open. And then going back to what Mark is saying, then let the staff figure out how that's going to look, working with teachers and staff.
Right.
So procedurally, there's not been a motion.
No.
So no motion, no action.
Anyone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we, tonight, we establish a aspirational opening date for TK through 5. I'm going all the way here. TK through 5, January 4th, 2021, and that we are asking the administration to come up with alternatives that with input from associations and administration and everybody else to come up with a way to make that as effective as possible.
Is there a second?
I'll go ahead and second.
Okay. Trustee Arkin?
Aye.
Trustee Miller?
Aye.
Trustee Larson?
Nay.
Trustee Yee?
I'd like to hear from David about the downsides of that motion.
The downsides of that motion. We've been talking about it for a couple hours now, but
Yeah, I know, but
that we're not moving forward getting help to kids. I don't know how else to say it besides that. That's not disparaging our teachers. Our teachers are doing absolutely phenomenal work with the remote learning, but there's some kids that's not reaching. And we've got to figure out ways to bring them in. And the best way that we could think about how to do that, and I appreciate Dr. Woodward and her team for coming up with a challenge to the plan of just opening TK2 and presenting an alternative option that says, look, we can do this. We believe we can do it without completely ripping away the effectiveness of the remote instruction. So this was not an easy 15 minutes, let's have a cup of coffee and make something up. They worked really, really hard on this. So we've brought to you, and we've got some folks in the room that have got some experience. All of us, most of us have been classroom teachers and principals and directors and other things. And we drew back to that DNA as we had these conversations about what's good for kids and what we think is best. And I think you ask us every time we show up to show up with our best. I believe we did that. That's the recommendation, but that was not the motion. So there's a motion on the table.
Well, I like the plan. I just think November 30th is just a little too, not enough time for people to get organized if we really want them to have a Thanksgiving break. So could we make it that the students show up December 7th?
That wasn't the motion.
I know, but I mean, would you guys be good with December 7th?
The way it works is a motion's made and seconded.
Right,
so
I know. All right, let's vote.
And then if it doesn't
Okay,
pass,
so I'm voting. I guess the vote was with me. So I vote no.
Okay, Trustee Maher votes yea. So it's 3-2. So the motion carries.
we will bring back a plan to the board for bringing back TK through 5 on January 4th.
At what's our next meeting?
Next Thursday night.
22nd. Okay. So next meeting is.
So on October 22nd, staff will bring back a plan to go up through.
I don't know if they'll bring it back then. I mean,
it's already
a plan to go to 5th grade.
No, that agenda's already set, so we'll bring it back in November.
Yeah, they need time to sit down. If they're going to include staff and teachers, I don't know who they're going to include, but you can't do that in a week. I mean,
I may need another special board meeting to do that one.
Possibly.
Sure, we'd be happy to call another special board meeting.
I've been at a meeting every day this week. I love it. Okay.
Yeah, maybe there's a special board meeting between the 22nd and the first November meeting, because I feel like that's a little bit too much time in between. But I mean, you guys need to plan and put your heads together, but I would prefer it come back before the November meeting. What
David, meet with your cabinet tomorrow, David, and then you tell us what kind of time you need.
What day is the November meeting? Is it the 12th?
Yes. And then there's only one in December.
There's only one meeting in November also, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
That's correct.
And then the third week or second week of December, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like for you guys to come back, before the November 12th meeting if we can.
If our start date is January 4th, I don't know that there's a rush to come back before November 12th.
We can get it that night. And we'll put a lot of things on the cassette calendar, Jamie, so we don't have to.
Okay. As long as it meets the requirements and doesn't go over that dollar threshold. Sure.
Okay. Anything else? Hearing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.